I've been using Morgen Calendar app as my planner app, so that's calendar for events and tasks and projects, for about 3 years. That includes my YouTube work, so managing 2 YouTube channels, managing a podcast, managing my own business in the last year or so, which is a physical business coaching trampoline. Then I also use it to manage my personal life with events and tasks and just general things around the house like shopping and all of my habit tracking as well. That's all inside of Morgen. After a few months of using Morgen, I then started sharing my experiences on the YouTube channel where I talk about technology, and I actually started talking in the Discord and helping some community members share how I use the tool and some of the features, because the features they're useful, they're obvious, but like Obsidian, my note-taking tool, they're flexible and customizable, which can add a bit of complexity. Hence this video. 3 weeks ago, as I'm recording this video, I actually started helping Morgen a little bit more officially in the community support inside of Discord and other areas, but Morgen is still, to me, the tool that I use every day because it's just good. As you can see at the time of making this video, they recently released their AI planner in beta, and if you scroll down, you've got all the other stuff. But if we click on pricing, you can see there is a basic free plan. So it's a planner app with a free plan, which I really like. And obviously I'm in the UK, so this is in pounds. But you can see you can start a 14-day free trial, which gives you all of the features, the time blocking, the automations, the workflows, the integrations. If it's billed monthly, it's more expensive, so billed yearly makes more sense. But they also have a switching discount, 15% off if you switch from another app like Motion, Reclaim, Fantastical, etc. Then you have the academic, student and non-profit discount, which is 25% off while you're a student, academic, etc. And if I was from a country that has parity pricing, it would be showing at the top, but obviously I'm from the UK, so I don't get parity pricing. You'll find a link to that in the description below, but in this video I want to go over everything that I've learned about Morgen up to this point, so I suggest having a look at the chapters if you know some bits, or if you're looking for a specific section, then navigate through the chapters down inside the description. And to get started, push the get started or the start your free trial. Now, because I already have an account, it's going to blitz me through because I've already connected my Google Calendar. So when I go get started, it does take you through onboarding, but I'm going to skip all of that because onboarding changes and I just want to get to the tool, to be honest. If you're anything like me, you want to actually play around with the tool rather than follow instructions, but some people like instructions. Anyway, to Morgen. I'm in a weekly view, but there is nothing going on. If I click in the profile picture bottom left, I get a lot of options. And I'm going to go to Preferences, click on Calendars, and in preparation for this video, I actually disconnected all of my calendars, all of my integrations, everything, so I'm starting from scratch. At the time of recording, Morgen isn't a calendar provider or local calendar or native calendar, whatever you want to call it. You need to connect an account, so I'm going to add an account. Here I can pick from Google, Outlook 365, Outlook, Exchange, these 3 are different, Fastmail, iCloud, other CalDAV providers, or a subscription calendar. I'm going to use Google as my personal calendar account, so I'm going to sign in with Google. I'm going to click on the account that I want to sign in with, sign into Morgen as that account, continue, authentication succeeded, which is good, and now I'm going to open up Morgen, and you can see now I have account connected and it's brought in all of my calendars on the calendar account. So continue. Now it's asking me to connect to Morgen Cloud. Now Morgen Cloud allows Morgen Desktop to sync to Morgen Mobile. You can see if you want the account to access on Morgen Mobile, then you'll need to connect it to the cloud. So I'm going to connect this account to the cloud. Again, I'm going to pick the same account, continue, authentication succeeded, clicking on the open. And you can see I have loads of calendars inside of this one calendar account. I'm now going to go to the pen in the top right and just rename that to personal. So this is my personal calendar account. And on the free plan, you can add one calendar account and just add all of the calendars to that Google Calendar or whatever account you connected to Morgen. Now you'll notice these calendars down the bottom are not automatically on. That's because these aren't my calendars. These are other people's calendars. So I'm going to change the name. If I click on the 3 dots, I've now changed the name of the calendars so you can't see what my family's calendars are. And we got Mum, holiday in United Kingdom, Dad, sister, and then Amelia, who is the podcast co-host. The next thing I want to do with these calendars is to actually change the colors. Now I want to change the color, so I'm going to make this red. You can see at the moment it's hiding everything because if the events were showing, it would give me a preview of what they're showing, but I've hidden all the events, so it's easier for you to see. I want the event calendar to be orange. Habits will go with green, and all these example calendars I'm just going to put as black. And for those of you curious, if you click on the icon right down the bottom with the triangle, you can then select any hex code or RGB, HSL, or just click and drag around and move things across to change the color, which will go to that calendar. Now for you, by default, some of the events should now be showing on your calendar. I personally am hiding them, and I'm doing that inside of this small calendar at the top. If I click on the calendar, it now shows me all of the different calendars that I have connected. So if I click the example 1 calendar on, it's now showing me all the events in the example 1 calendar, which is just morning routine, lunch, and dinner. These are repeated, and then we have trampoline Friday afternoon. I can then go through and click all of the other calendars on, which, as you can see, there's nothing in those calendars. But this is where Morgen starts to differentiate itself from other calendar apps. You can see here we've got a set. So if I click on the no set and then push 9, now 9, the example calendar 1 shows. I'm going to add all those example calendars to calendar set 9. So at the moment we've got example 1 showing. If I push 9, now have a look at the calendar, it's actually showing all of those calendars. So let's say I have an event going on after lunch that is 2 hours long. So it's 1 till 3, I have an event. I'm going to change the name new event. At the top you can see this is the calendar that the event has been made in. If I change this to example 2 and now save the event, I can turn off all of these other example calendars. So I'm only showing calendar example 1. But if I push 9 on the keyboard, now the new event is showing because it's showing all of those calendars in the calendar set. What I personally do is have 0 as a calendar set to 0 everything. So I want to show absolutely everything. It gets very busy very quick. So I'm going to go back to number 9 and create some other calendar sets. So during my day, I want to have some calendar showing. I want my tech YouTube calendar showing. I want my events calendar showing. I want my tasks. I want my habits. And then I want sports YouTube. So they are the 2 different YouTube channels. So now when I push 1 on my keyboard, it's showing what I need to do today. Then when I push 9, it goes back to my example calendar. However, when I'm planning, I don't actually want to see all of my habits because I do lots of habits in the morning and obviously lunch and the rest of it. So I don't have that on my calendar set 2. But then in a similar sense, when I'm doing longer planning, I don't want to see all of my tasks on there either. So I have a calendar set 3. And what this allows me to do is if I push 1, it shows me everything I'm working on. 2 is rough planning, so it's got rid of those habits. 3 is now overview planning, which at the moment you can see is empty, which I'll get to later. But this is just my personal calendar account. If I click manage calendars, it takes me back to the calendars setting. And now I want to add another calendar account. Now this is one of those pro features, so bear that in mind. I'm going to now add an Office 365 calendar account, sign in with Microsoft. I'm going to pick the account, authentication succeeded, and it's going to say go back to Morgen. And here you can see I've only got 3 calendars in this work account. I'm going to change the color of that to make it the same as my events calendar. I'm going to leave birthdays and holidays on there because it doesn't really affect me that much. And I also want to connect it to the Morgen cloud. So we're going to pick the same account and open up Morgen again. And in the same way, I'm going to change the name and call it work. So now I have a personal calendar account and a work calendar account, all of which have the same settings, except this Outlook calendar account lets you add a user calendar by email. I'm not going to do any of that at the moment, so I'm going to exit out. But now I want to have a look at the calendar sets. You can see the work, birthday, United Kingdoms have no set. So I'm going to add them all to the 0 set. And then I'm going to add my work calendar to all of the 3 sets at the start as well for general day work, short planning, and long-term planning. Now to cover some of the views that you have inside of Morgen, obviously we've gone through calendar sets and it will show or hide the events as appropriate through the keyboard hotkeys. But if I push D, it will go to the day view. W is a week view. X is a 2-week view. M is a month view. If I was to go to D for the day, I can use the right arrow key to move to the right, so in future, left to go back. If I'm in the week view and I go right, it moves a week over, left a week back. X, again, 2 weeks, but I move the right, I'm right over. If I push T, it takes me back to today. You'll notice the 2-week view is starting from today, so if we go back to the week view, move to the 2-week view, you can see it's going from a Monday start to a 2 weeks from today start, which if you don't want 2 weeks, you could hold Control and push 7. So now I've got 7 days. You can see at the top, it's now a 7-day view. I can go 3-day view, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9. 2 days, and then obviously Control 1 is the same as pushing D for a day. When pushing M to go to the month view, you can push the right arrow key to go to the next month, and then the next month, you see all of these are recurring tasks. If you click on the week number inside the month view, it will go to the week. You can see it's now grayed out, week 48. If you go back to the month view, I can then push the day. So let's go to the 6th, and now we're on the 6th. But because we're on a day view, now I can hover over and actually go to the week view by clicking. So you could click or use hotkeys, it's up to you. And if you have a look at the top, there are arrow keys if you want to click to go right or left, and the middle circle is going back to today. If you're in the week view, similar to the day view, if you click on a day, it will take you to the day view, which you can go back to the week view, go forward, go to the Saturday, etc., etc. What is interesting is that if you click on this view option, you've got day, week, month, and you see the hotkeys next to it with the custom, but you also get view options below. If I click on week to go to the week view, you can see we've got show weekend. So we've got Sunday and then Saturday. So we've got Saturday and Sunday showing. I can hide them. So now it's not showing weekends. I could widen the current day view. So at the moment, all of these are the same width. When I go to today is wider. When I click back on the week, I can make it the exact same, or I can make it wider. I prefer wider, it's up to you. Dim past events, you can dim them or have them showing, again, up to you. Show completed tasks now relates to task management inside of Morgen. So if I was to left click like I did before and any time, we have 3 options. We can make an event, which we did before, or we could make a task and a frame, which I'll explain later on. Look at the AI planner timestamps if you want to skip to that section. So while we're in the edit boxes, I'm going to bring your attention to different points, different differences with the events and tasks. An event is blocked. We've got a notes section, which is the description of the event. We can add a tag, which adds a color. You see, I add the tag, it changes the color, which is what I've done to these events over here. It's in the black calendar, because that's the color of the calendar, and the blue event tag. If I click, I can then remove the tag, delete the tag, or change the color. I'm going to remove it. Events also give you the option to add an attendee, so invite someone to the event. Maybe it's a physical location event or a conferencing event. So say I wanted to add Amelia, podcast co-host, to a meeting. I can then type in, and then the email appears as an attendee. I can click it. I can then collapse all the attendees or expand all the attendees, add another attendee. In the right, if I go to the 3 dots, I can copy the email, I can send them an email, or I can mark them as an optional attendee. You can see there, it's optional. Now that I've made it optional, I can say mark required, so now they are meant to turn up. And just above that, I can check availability, which only works if I actually have access to their calendar, which I do. So it's now going to show that this person is actually busy in these slots. And you'll notice in the event, there is now a green tick because they are available. If I turn this off, it then hides their calendar, and this can actually be superpowered with the Morgen Team features, which again, I'll go over later. But I don't want to send Amelia a notification about joining a random event, so I'm going to remove them. Then there is the all day box, so I can tick it to all day, or I can turn it off and it will default back to the time that I selected in the calendar selection schedule, which gives a start date and time, and end date and time, which when you click on, you can change the date and time with date pickers and all the things you would normally expect. So you drag up and down and go, put it where you want. I don't think I ever actually adjust the time. I just drag it down or up on the day or across. The only time I really use the date picker is if I need to move it to next week, for example. So now we're in next week, but I don't want to do that for this one right now. And again, you have the navigation with the arrows at the top to move forwards or backwards wherever you want. If you decide actually this meeting needs to be in 2 months' time. So right, and then click. Now it's on the 24th, but I'm not going to do that. I want it to be today. Then there is the time zone setting. Obviously, I'm in London. Well, I'm not in London. I'm around London, but that's the time zone that I'm in. I don't want it to repeat. But when I click on repeat, you can have no repeat every day. So it goes every day, every weekday, every week, every month, every year, or you can add a custom occurrence. And this uses sort of natural language AI detection. You can see there are examples down the bottom, but I haven't found an occurrence that doesn't work in this yet. So Monday, Tuesday, Friday, I'm going to push enter, and then it's going to say every week on Monday, Tuesday, and Friday. I don't want it to do that, so I'm going to say no repeat. So it hasn't actually put it on the calendar because I didn't save the event. I can then add a location like you would with any other event. I can add a conferencing link, which you can see has already automatically added a Google Meet meeting link. So because I've added a Google Calendar into Morgen, Morgen has created an integration with Google Meet. This room at the top is actually something that I have set up. So if we go to Manage Integrations, You'll notice we're in that preferences settings box. Instead of being in the calendar section, we're now external integrations. This is the Google Calendar. The Google Meet conferencing link will be on. If I go down to conferencing links, you can see I have a permanent conferencing link inside of Morgen. So you can add here any permanent links. You'll notice by the icon, this is Zoom. This is something I forgot to take out before doing the video, but this is my personal Zoom room that I have inside of Morgen, which appears as an option as a fixed custom link because it's in the settings. Then you can add alerts to the specific event. When you add an alert, this could be minutes before, hours before, or days before. So let's say 30 minutes before, I'm going to add another alert 1 hour before, add another alert 2 hours before, and you can get rid of them, you can customize them, you change them, or restore to defaults, which defaults to the alerts for the calendar. So the example to calendar. If I save this event and then in calendars go to the example to calendar, you'll notice there's manage reminders. And in the manage reminders, you can add reminders for timed events. So because this blocked event is a timed event, I want to add a reminder 30 minutes before, which will appear on my phone or on my desktop app for every event in this calendar. You could also add reminders or alerts for all-day events separately. So maybe all-day events you want a 1 day before reminder, but scheduled you want a 30-minute reminder. That's for all of the events and tasks on this calendar. So when I go back, example 2 will give me reminders and alerts. But events and tasks from other calendars won't unless, again, I set it up. So events, manage reminders, this is 10 minutes before. So this will get a 30-minute before. So you can use tons of notifications if you want. I personally don't want loads of notifications, so I'm going to remove that. And then there is the busy, free, tentative, out of office setting for an event. So if you're busy, other people will see you as busy in this time slot. If you're free, then other people will see you as free in that time slot. This event is going to be a busy one. And is it going to be public? So if you're sharing it, will people be able to see the words? Or is it going to be private, where people can't see the words when you're sharing it? I keep most of my calendars public and busy because I don't share any of my calendars apart from 2. So the default busy and public works fine for me. And so I'm going to save the event. Now I'm going to do the exact same thing, but instead of using event, I'm going to go to task. And you'll notice this has actually changed the calendar. Because I've moved it to a task, it's moved it to my task calendar because that is in my settings. In the preferences general settings, there is a default calendar for events. This is set up to automatic. I'm going to move it to my events calendar. So now any event created will default to the events calendar. And the default calendar for tasks was also set to automatic. And because the last task I created was in the task calendar, Morgen assumes you want to make another task in that calendar. Now, I actually want to make it default tasks rather than automatic, because if I was to make, for example, a task in my events calendar, the next task I make would also go to the events calendar. But most of the time, my tasks go to my task calendar, hence the task calendar. And while we're here, when I did the left click, you saw information. That is this setting here, show slot details in one click. It can be on all events, only on due date events, which I'll get to later, they're tasks, or disabled. I have this on all events. What this means is when I left click on something, it shows more information. If I left click on this one, it will show more information. This can be handy in situations like this, where, as you can see, I've got this task appearing multiple times in the evening, but it's covering up this, so I can left click and see genders and coaching, that's what that task is, rather than having to try and navigate my way around or double click in. So to go back to editing this task, I'm going to double click. I'm going to call it test task, and you'll notice there are some different things in this task. We've got a planned start, not a start, a planned start, and a planned end. Again, not an end. So this isn't a start and end, it's a planned start, planned end, which I'll go over a little bit more in a minute. But the date selection and time selection is exactly the same as events, and the repeat, again, is exactly the same as events, because the Morgen tasks are just events that you can tick. However, if we go down, this is where the main differences appear. We have a task inbox option, which you can't do with events. If I left click, I then get an option for all of the task lists that I've made. Again, I'll go through that later. There is then a priority, so high, medium, low, or no priority status. An estimate, so this is how long I think the task might take. And this can be customized. You can type in for 16 hours or use any of the default settings. This is 30 minutes, that'll do for the moment. And then we have a due date. And this is where I love Morgen, but where Morgen can be a little bit complex, because we now essentially have 2 dates. I have a due date, let's say it's due on the 28th, but I have a planned start and planned end on the 26th. So test task now has 2 dates. It has a due date and a planned start and end date. The alerts, the busy, the public is all exactly the same as the events. So when I save this, I now have a test task scheduled for the 26th. But if I left click on the task, Control C, then go to tomorrow, and then before I paste with Control V, you can see there's the events calendar. It's defaulted to that one because of the setting I just changed. But I go Control V, it's automatically copied that task into Wednesday. And this is actually the same task. They are related. So when I double left click, you can see it looks like a unique task, but it's a different session of the same task. One way you can tell is it's actually got the same due date. It's got the exact same due date. All of the other information is the same except from the planned start and planned end. That's because this has created a second session. And these don't have to be on different days. So if I left click, Control C, and then Control V to paste down here, I now have 3 different places where this task appears. So there's 3 different scheduled times for this task, but 1 due date. And each of these scheduled slots is somewhat unique because you can change the name of the task. So let's say test task 2. I can then also change the calendar. So let's put it into the example 2 calendar. Yes, I want to move the event, so I'm going to confirm. So you can see this task is now in example 2. It's got a new name. I can add notes to this task inside of the task description, which would show up in the event description. I'm also going to add a priority to this one, say medium, and save. But if I go to the test task over here, so this scheduled slot, it's still in the task calendar. There's no notes. It's got a different name, but the priority has synced because, like I say, these are the same task. If I change the name to 3, add some different notes and save, and then go to the original test task, we still don't see the notes because that's specific to this scheduled task. And the name again is specific to this scheduled task. But if we change the priority from medium to high and save, now jump back to test task 2, the priority again is synced because they are the same task. Now, this task is in the task list, but where is the task list? If we go to the top left, you can see we've got tasks, open invites, booking page, and then Morgen Workflows. So I'm going to go on Morgen Tasks. I'm in the Morgen Task section. We've got overdue and inbox, but it's not showing. The test task is here, it's scheduled, and it's in the task inbox, but it's not showing. That is because inside the view settings, if I scroll all the way down, you can see show scheduled tasks. That's currently ticked off. So it's not showing any task that is scheduled. If I tick it on, now it's showing blocked. Why is it showing blocked? Well, I changed the name of the task in the scheduled section. The original task when I created it and saved it was called blocked, just like the event. So that's what Morgen sees as the parent task, but each scheduled slot has its own unique name. Test task 2, and test task 3. You can see the task list is still the same. The priority is synced across the task, but the name, the notes, they are different. So you could class the main task as the project and each scheduled session as a task, a subtask as it were. Now when I push save, it's not going to change the name of the scheduled tasks because, again, they are unique. What this also allows you to do, because these are unique tasks, obviously this is in example 2, which is a different calendar set. So if I push 9, now it's hiding all of the other tasks related to this project because they're not in this calendar. This is where a lot of flexibility and customization can come into using Morgen like this. And if you want to bring in the exact task, you can just drag it from the left and drag it into the task and schedule it. This is now going to show the rest of the calendars because it's going to default to task. And now I have another scheduled slot, so I can left click and change the name or add information in where I want to. But I could quite easily just push the plus button and add a subtask. Now I have a subtask to this main parent task. The main parent task, as you can see here, has multiple sessions, the next today at 3:40, but this subtask has not been scheduled. Again, this subtask can have multiple sessions just like a normal one. So I can drag it on, schedule it in, and now in the sidebar it's showing just the one calendar because it's scheduled for tomorrow at 3:25. When I double click in, I can say subtask 1. I'm actually going to change the priority to medium, save, and you can see now it's been adjusted. If I want a different due date, say I want to have this due on the 27th and save, I now have a unique due date for this subtask when compared to the project task. And to make this easier to see, I'm actually going to go to the view option and turn on one of the settings down here which says manage due dates on the calendar. This is now showing some of the other due dates I have, but you can see we've got the subtask due date here on the 27th and the project due date here on the 28th. You'll notice in the sidebar Thursday and tomorrow, 27th and 28th. Visualizing the due dates like this also allows you to move the due date. So say I want the project actually due on the 29th, I can left click, drag and drop. Now the due date is on Friday, and if I go to the project, you can see the due date has been changed in all of those task instances. If I drag that back to Thursday, again, it's going to update it to Thursday. If I drag this into the past and say Monday, well, now it's overdue. So because the task is overdue, it's appearing in the overdue section. It is also showing the subtask in the overdue section because that's underneath this project. So you get a full overview of the project or task that is overdue. Even though this is due tomorrow, the main one is actually overdue. If it was the other way around, so say the project is due tomorrow, but the subtask was overdue, it's still going to show the project in the overdue section because it gives you an idea that, hey, this subtask was actually overdue and it relates to this project which happens to be due tomorrow. So even though this was meant to be done yesterday, it really should be done soon because the main project is due tomorrow. If we move these tasks out a little bit, so say it's due then, now it's not showing an overdue, but maybe you still want to see them due. This is where you go to the view, scroll down, and we get the sidebar preferences, enable due today, due tomorrow, and due soon. As you can see, we've got nothing overdue, we've got nothing due today, nothing due tomorrow, and nothing due soon in the sidebar that's being shown. However, if you are a little bit confused because you can see these three are actually due today, but they're not showing in the sidebar, that's because I'm hiding those task lists. If I go to the view section, filtering, I have all of my other personal tasks, which I'm not showing you yet, hidden. So they're not appearing in the sidebar, but the due date visualization setting, i.e. the manage due dates on calendar, is turned on, which is why these due dates are being shown on the calendar, but why the tasks are not being shown in the sidebar. If I quickly show all, you can see now I have lots of things appearing, but that's much harder to navigate, so I'm going to turn them all off and just show the inbox. If you're like me and you use Morgen Tasks, you'll be able to navigate those easy because you'll see what tasks are due when, but for a beginner video like this, it can be quite overwhelming, so I'm going to keep them hidden. So back to our subtask and our project, if we move the subtask to tomorrow, now the subtask is being shown in the due tomorrow, and it's showing with the parent task, project as well. And then it's also both showing in due soon because the project is due soon. If I now complete the subtask, so I've completed subtask 1, yes, I know that was tomorrow, but I've completed it. You can see the sidebar has now changed because I've completed the subtask, and so it's not due tomorrow, it's due soon because the project is due soon. The subtask has also disappeared from the calendar view, and if we go back to that week setting which I mentioned earlier, you can show completed tasks on the calendar. Now this is going to show all of my other completed tasks, which you can see is kind of all over the place, but there we have subtask 1 and it's been completed. You'll also notice that you can show declined events, which is similar to the task. If you decline an event, so say you're not going to turn up, you can show it or hide it. I personally don't show it, so I keep this off. And then merge duplicate events does exactly what it says. If there are duplicate events, i.e. you have, say, a podcast co-host that has an event in their calendar and you're showing their calendar and your calendar, the events will merge with the calendar colors that you have set for them. I keep the calendar colors the same so I don't see the merges, but to show you an example, I'm going to change my personal calendar. So my personal events calendar is now blue. My work calendar is still orange. Now you can see the stand up in the morning is now blue and orange because it's in both of those calendars and it's just been merged. If I double click, it says the event appears in 2 calendars, so I can switch to the next calendar. That's the busy event created via workflows, which I'll go through later, and then this is the event inside of the work calendar. When looking back at this task, if I go in and complete this task, it won't actually complete the main task in the side because, remember, there are multiple sessions. So I'm going to bring back the tasks. We've got this test task that needs to be completed, this one that needs to be completed, and this one that needs to be completed, which now when I hover over, it says all sessions are in the past or completed. Now this doesn't automatically tick the task off because you might want to schedule it again and it's not actually fully completed, which is where I really like this for project management, because I can say, oh yes, this project has actually been completed, shows in the due soon, or let's say this project was actually due today, it's now due today, have I completed it? Well, if I look, yes, all of the tasks are completed. Do I need to do anything else with it? No, I can tick it off. If I quickly schedule something for this evening, and you can see it says multiple sessions, next is today at 9:20, well, actually I know I've completed this is actually not needed, I can tick this project off, and it would tick off all of the other tasks or versions and sessions of the task off because I've ticked it off in the sidebar to say, yep, I have completed that. Looking at the sidebar, instead of clicking and dragging and then creating a task, you could type task, so spell out task, space, and that changes an event to a task, which is a nice shortcut. Instead, you might want to create a task that isn't scheduled, which you can do inside of the sidebar. I'm going to go to the inbox task list, push plus, type out the name of the task and enter. Now I've created a task inside of the inbox. I'm just going to click out because I don't want to make a new one. And this task doesn't have any schedule information. If I left click, I can add notes, I can change the name, I can change the task list, add priority, estimate, due date, but I can't add any recurring information to this task from the sidebar. Once I've scheduled the task inside of the calendar, you can see it's defaulted to the task calendar. Now showing the task calendar is now also showing that it's scheduled today at 4 o'clock. And when I double click on that task, I can now add the repeating information. But as I mentioned earlier, this task is in Google Calendar. It could be in the Outlook calendar. If I click and go down, I could add it to an Outlook calendar, but at the moment, it's stored in Google. So when I go into my Google Calendar, you can see I've turned all the calendars off except for my task calendar, which looks a little messy. You can see down here, we have the Morgen video task, which in Google Calendar is showing as an event because it's not a Google task, it's a Morgen task. And what you might notice is it's a public event. And when we go into edit this event, it is currently a busy event that's public, even though it's a task in Morgen. So I'm going to use the hotkey for Morgen, Alt-C, to open up Morgen over Google Calendar. So when I double click, you can see it's saying busy. If I now complete this task, so now the task has been completed, it's also disappeared from the inbox, I push Alt-C to close down Morgen, you'll notice the Google event has now changed to free. So by ticking the task complete, the Morgen video record task is now free, which means if you're using this calendar as a busy calendar for people to check, when you complete a task, it doesn't show you as busy anymore because you've completed it, which assumes you're free. If I go up to the week view, show completed tasks, double click into the Morgen video, you can see it's showing as free because the task in Morgen is complete. So the event on Google Calendar means you're free because you've done it. When working with other people and team members, this can be really helpful because they can see, oh, okay, you're busy because you're still doing a task. Maybe you're editing something, but once you've completed it, you're now free. And while we're here, if we hover over this tick, you can see I can restore the task. This task has been archived, so it's in Morgen, it's been archived, and to reopen it, I can restore the task. Now it's been restored, I can tick it, and now it's not done. So when I go back to Google Calendar, it's now busy again because I now need to complete it again. And for reference, if you want to find all your archived tasks, you can go to the view and then show archived tasks, and it will show you all the archived tasks. I don't think I've really ever used that apart from deleting the archived task, but it's there. So we now have the Morgen video record. But why does this one look different to the ones below? That is because of the task list they are in. So if I go to this view section, we've got the add new task list button to create a new task list. I'm not going to create a new one, I'm just going to show you one that I've already got. So I'm going to toggle on my inbox 2. Now you can see I've got some due today, I've got one due soon, and it's 7 inside of the inbox 2. This is actually my inbox. I just made the task list to hide them for the earlier part of the video. What I'm now going to do is left click, drag and drop them into the task list to move them back into my inbox. But now I'm going to drag this Morgen video record into inbox 2. And by hovering over the task list, I can add a task as you've seen, but click the 3 dots and change the color. So I'm going to change this to red, and you'll notice the Morgen video record task is now looking more reddy orange than it did before. We've still got that thick line, which is the calendar it's in, the blue task calendar it's in, but the reddy orange task list color is around the outside, which is why these two look different, because they are in a task list that is purple. If I drag this back to the inbox, you can see the color's gone, and now it's just the default blue because that's the task list it's in. Inbox is just default to the calendar, whereas the inbox 2 has a task list color, which changes it. I can also use the 3 dots and then rename the task list. So let's say test task list, and now we have a test task list, but I don't actually want this task list, so I'm going to delete it. But pre-warning, if you delete it, it says the list and all its tasks will be deleted. So if I wanted to keep this task, I need to remove it before I delete the list, but I don't actually want it, so I'm going to delete it. The task has been deleted and the task list has now gone. But if we head back up to that view section, there were also other settings. At the top, you can see we've got group by. At the moment, I'm grouping by task list. In Morgen Tasks, I can also group by priority. So now we have high priority, medium priority, low priority, and no priority. And it's also showing all of those other tasks that I had hidden in the task list. So you can see the filtering has now changed to high, medium, low, or no. And just like the lists, you can turn them off. So now I'm only showing high priority. I can show all, show none. If I go to the task list, I now get the task list options. I'm going to show none and then just show the inbox. Because we then get a second option, which is then organized by, and this could be the other. So I'm going to organize by priority. Now I've got inbox group and high priority ordering. So we've got the sales page, this in medium, and then all of those in no priority. If I change the group by to priority and then organize by task list, and let's show all, now I can see the high priority tasks from the inbox task list, from the trampoline task list, from the recurring task list, etc. If you don't want to see empty groups, you can also hide empty groups. So you can see at the moment it's saying due tomorrow is empty. If I hide it, now it's hiding due tomorrow and overdue because there is nothing due tomorrow or overdue. But I'm going to go back to task list, and at the moment you can see the ordering, so the sort order is manual. It could be by priority. So instead of organizing priority, I can sort by priority. So now I've got the high priority at the top, then medium, then the no. And you can see we've got the directions, so maybe I want to go ascending, so high priority is at the bottom. Why you'd want to do that, I'm not sure, but you can do. We then have due date, so things that are due soon are at the top. Or again, you can do due soon down the bottom. Estimated time, so the things that you estimate to take the longest, again, ascending or descending. The grouping, the sort ordering, and the filtering, all very flexible with various combinations, which you'll see later on with some of the external integration tasks, adding further customization to this. My personal preference is to group by task list, no organization, because I sort order by due date, and that's in ascending, so I have the things due closest at the top. And then if we go below the filtering, there are display labels. At the moment, I'm showing all of the labels. In this specific case, it's not showing the task list because I'm actually grouping by task list. There's no need to show it if we already know it. But if I group by priority, now you can see trampoline, inbox, trampoline, that's the task list. I can tick this off, so now it doesn't show that display label. You can see here, this is a high priority task. I can hide the high priority or show the high priority. I can hide the due date, I can hide the estimate time, I can show them. So when I go back to my task list, now it's only showing priority. I personally like to see the due date and the estimated time, and I keep the task list on because in the due list, you can see if I turn this off, it now hides, so I turn it on, so I show them in the due lists, and it doesn't show in this view because I'm grouping by task list, so it doesn't clutter up my view. Something I feel worth noting at this point is if I turn this off, so now it's going to hide all of these scheduled tasks, and I add a task in for yesterday, and let's call it overdue task, and have the due date for yesterday, and save it, and you can see even though I'm hiding all of the scheduled tasks, because this is overdue, Morgen assumes that you'd actually want to know that this is overdue because of the due date. You can see it's behind, so it's showing you the scheduled task because all sessions in the past are completed. And as this main task isn't completed but still scheduled, it's going to show. If we move this to, let's say, later this evening, it's now going to hide itself because it's no longer overdue. And because it's scheduled, it's not going to show in the sidebar. So Morgen makes that assumption that you'd want to see a scheduled task that's overdue according to the due date. But you can see as I've moved the schedule slot back, it didn't move the due date. The due date stayed the same. If I wanted to move the due date, I then move the due date back, assuming you're visualizing it with that manage due dates on the calendar setting. But this is another one of those really nice features. If I move this overdue task to, let's say, Wednesday, the due date has been updated and now moved forwards. If we go to the profile picture, go to preferences, and have a look below these task settings, which I'll go through in a second, move task due date. I have this set to always. but you can have it say ask every time. So if you move a task beyond the due date and schedule it after the due date, you can tell Morgen to ask you every time whether or not to update the due date, never update the due date, or always update the due date. My preference is for Morgen to always update the due date if I schedule a task after the due date, but maybe your workflow is different. These settings relate to the tasks on your Google Calendar or Outlook calendar, which I mentioned earlier. You can have it set to private or public, visibility of scheduled tasks. So when a task is scheduled, is it public or private? And then the transparency of scheduled tasks. Is it busy or free? So if we double click into this overdue task, it's busy and public because it's saying busy and public. If I was to set this to private and free, then create a task, you can see it's now free and private. Something you may have noticed is inside the view settings, in this filtering, you can drag any of these lists up or down, which reorders them inside of your sidebar. If I group by, let's say, priority, I can do the same, have medium priority at the top or no priority at the top because I need to prioritize these. So there is an element of manually ordering the groupings of the tasks in the sidebar as well. For those with loads of tasks, there is a search option. If you go to the top, you can click on the search and let's type in overdue. There's the overdue task. It's got all the information on it. That's the one that we're playing with over here. I can clear all the filters and now I'm sorted. And the reason it's a filter is because if you go into filters, Morgen Tasks, I can filter by any of these things. So just look at the high priority tasks, or just look at the inbox tasks, the small, the big, the due, whatever. So let's just go all the tasks. I'm now filtering by all of the tasks. Now, this is somewhat redundant because we've only got Morgen Tasks in here, but when we bring in more tasks from external integrations, this view shows as much or as little as you want with some sort orders. The Morgen priority factor, which again I will go into further details with the AI planner, importance or priority, due date, and then the source. The source in this case is just Morgen right now. But I'm going to clear all of the filters out, close these task lists down so it doesn't look so busy. And now I want to head back to the preferences. Before I get that, I'll quickly show you there is a small calendar, a mini calendar to navigate various places into the future. So let's jump forward to this week in March. You can now jump forwards there and then click on the button to go back to today, or you could click the button at the top, in the middle, the right and left. So there is a mini calendar if you want it available in the bottom left. I rarely use it, but let's head over to the preferences. And you can see at the top, you can explore the features, which we are currently doing in this video, or explore the shortcuts. Now, I've already gone through some of these, but there are a couple I want to highlight. Obviously, dark and light mode, you can go between the two. I normally am in dark theme, but for this video, I'm in the light theme. Hide window, minimize window. The global shortcut is the one that I use the most. On Windows, it's Alt-C. And then the global shortcut to toggle the command bar, which I'll go through in a minute, is Control-Shift-K. What this means is if I Alt-C, it closes it down. Alt-C, it opens it up. If I drag this a little bit smaller and just default it to day and today, Alt-C, now I see my day in the side, which to me is what I do all the time when I'm trying to check my schedule. Let's push 9 to go back to that example set. Left click, drag to the top to maximize the window. That's how I navigate Morgen most of the time. If I click on preferences, go to shortcuts, that is the global shortcut sidebar mode. Here you have some quick access feature shortcuts, the calendar view shortcuts, which I went through most of them earlier. We then have the changing events, so C to create event, E to edit an event. I just double click, that's my preference because my hand's already on the mouse. Copy and paste is there. If I go back to general, quit Morgen is Control Q in case you do need to do just a restart from an update, or maybe there's some syncing issue with a calendar. And then I like that Control F is opening up the search. That's not the task search at the top left, which I've just gone through. If I Control F, that is the search in the top right, which looks for events and tasks. So if I type in level, you can see level 1, and I can go backwards or forwards in time. You can see this is blue, which means it's a task in my task calendar. I know that, but it's still showing as a somewhat event because this is just what's on your calendar that's got level in it. If I type in overdue, you can see there's the task for tomorrow, overdue. If I type in task, I've got email tasks for today, test tasks, some fiddling around, but then I can scroll back to the past and see anything that I need to. And that's a global search, which is different from the task sidebar search, which just filters for the tasks. Instead of pushing Control F, you can actually click on the search bar to go to it, which is next to the calendar set option, the AI planner, which again I'll go through later, and then the command bar, which I've just discussed, has the Control-Shift-K hotkey, global hotkey. If you go into preferences, go to the general settings and scroll all the way down, you can see you can turn on or off the global toggle hotkey, the one that I use all the time. I open in the sidebar format. You can open in the last position or have it disabled. And the same with the global command bar. It's either enabled or disabled. The shift is for when you're not in Morgen, which is why when I come up here, it says Control K. Morgen is currently open. Control K opens up the command bar. If, however, I Alt-C to close down Morgen, now I push Control-Shift-K to open up the command bar. At which point you can see you can create an event, you can create a task, and then you have all of the other shortcuts available inside the command bar. So if I was to add a new task, I can say add new task. I can then, you can see down the bottom, use the slash to add it to a calendar, @ for an attendee, location, tag, because at the moment I'm hovering over the event. If I move to task, it changes those tips. So calendar, task as priority. I don't tend to use the mouse here. I just use greater than, read later, enter, and then I'm going to say tomorrow 3 p.m. So now it's going to create a task called add new task. Tomorrow, which is Wednesday at 3 p.m. till 4 p.m. in the read later task list, and then I push enter, and you can see it's now added that task. It's also showing the task from that calendar, so Control-2 to show it, and there it is. But because I don't want it, I can get rid of it. If I right click, we get a few options. I can unschedule the task, so it goes into the sidebar, or I can unschedule and delete. If I was to left click on the task, and then push the delete button in the hotkey, you can see the read later list has gone up to 3 because all it's done is unscheduled the task. So delete is unschedule. If I right click, unschedule and delete, now you see the 2, it's going to completely delete it from my Morgen. Going back to the command bar with Control K, let's go 9 p.m. Let's use a tag, event tag, and let's just block out that time, 9 till 10. I have an event 9 till 10, and now it's showing the event. It's also showing other events in that calendar because I'm now showing the calendar set. And as I click off, you can see it's in the orange calendar, but because of the event tag, it's showing as blue. But in this case, because it's an event, it's either you're doing it or you're not. So when I left click and delete, it actually deletes the event. And then I push 9 to go back to that example calendar set. Carrying along the settings across the top, you can see I am in GMT. That is my time zone, but I have other time zones available. I've got LA, New York, Brussels, Chicago, Zurich, because these are different time zones I work with people from. So I like to know the time zone there. I can add time zone and add any time zone that I want. But you may notice there's no time zone showing right now. Let's go to a week view. But if I hover over the left time, you can see there's the time zones. And a feature that I really like is if I go to an event and then hold shift, you can now see the time zones right there. So you don't have to go all the way across to actually see the time zone. I can just hold shift over an event and that's when it is. So lunch from 12 till 1 in Zurich is from 1 till 2, or LA 4 till 5 in the morning, which yeah, I wouldn't be up at that time. And while we're talking about events, if I move over to the podcast and I left click on podcast, you can see there is a join button. And that is because there is a conferencing link inside of the event, which I can join. If I double click, you can see join the meeting. The Zoom meeting is inside, actually, in this case, the description rather than in the conferencing link. But if Morgen can detect that there is a conferencing link somewhere, there will be a join button. And when that event starts, so as a quick example, what I've done is I've created an event. You can see there's the join button, there's the link. It goes to my personal Zoom room. I now have a join button in the bottom right. If this was to be in my normal view, which is down here, there's the join button, join the call, blocked. I left click and it will join the call. Or I can exit out and now I just have a camera to say, hey, you're meant to be in a meeting right now. Are you going to join it or not? Left click and then join the call. But because I'm already on a call with myself, I'm going to delete that, which of course will get rid of the join button. For those of you that don't like this time format, you can change the time format depending on the region that you're in. So when we go to preferences inside of general, you can see time zone. I am in the London time zone, so that's my time zone for Morgen, but the regional format changes whether it's in 12 or 24 hours. And also any other time format or regional format that you can see inside of the drop-down list. So if I go to English, you can see we've got United States or these others. If I go to United Kingdom, you notice the regional format has changed. Now it's 24 hours, so 16, 17, 18, 19. But I personally prefer 12 hours, which is why I'm at the United States in the regional formatting, which gives me 4 p.m., 5 p.m., 6 p.m. Moving down to some of the other settings, first day of the week. My first day of the week is Monday, some people it's Sunday, and you can start the week whenever you want. A nice custom feature. My initial view is the day, as I mentioned. I'm always in the day sidebar view, but you can change the initial view. Maybe you want to go for the week. My theme is normally in dark mode, which looks like this, which I far prefer, but then I'm an Obsidian user, and Obsidian is typically dark mode as well. Then I'm going to keep it to light mode, because I know lots of people prefer the light mode for whatever reason. It's a preference. Then we've got the time grid start and time grid end. I start my day at around 8 o'clock, so I like to give myself an hour in the window to start, which means if I go actually back to my calendar, I can't scroll up or down. You might be able to hear my mouse wheel scrolling up and down. I can't move it because it's showing me my entire day. If, however, I go to the grid start time and say 12 a.m., well, now I have this sort of dead time where I'm actually asleep and I can scroll up and down. I personally don't like being able to scroll up and down. That day shutdown is actually there, so I'm showing the end of my day at the beginning of my day, which is a bit odd, but of course you can play around with this as much as you want. I go 7 a.m. till 12 a.m. and what you can also do with this is the time display resolution. I have this currently set to 30 minutes. If you go to 5, it basically zooms in. So you can see now I have a lot of scrolling to actually get anywhere because everything has been zoomed in to 5 minutes. So I can see 5-minute slots. When I click there, you can see it's from 5:15 to 5:20. This is a very granular, narrow view of the calendar. But then you could go the other way and say an hour, and now everything is in an hour slot, and I can see lots of dead space down the bottom because there's just nothing else to show. Which, for me, the size of my screen, the amount of day that I want to show, 30 minutes is the time resolution I prefer, starting from 7 a.m. till 12 a.m, but everyone may be slightly different. Maybe you only want to show your calendar for your work hours, so adjust them accordingly. The time dragging resolution is how much they block up when you drag it. Is it 5 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes? If I click to drag this meeting around, is it going in 5-minute slots, or is it going in 15-minute slots or half-hour slots? I use 5 because it feels smoother, not because I really use the 5, it just feels smoother to me, rather than if I do 30, I click and then sort of like jumps to 30. I personally don't like that, but again, this is one of those custom features that I like Morgen giving you the option. As I've mentioned throughout this quite a lot, I use Morgen most of the time throughout the day, so yes, I want it to launch on startup, signature on event scheduled with Morgen. You can turn it off, but I keep it on, it doesn't really bother me. And then the limit events per day, I actually find this really useful, and I don't understand why more calendar apps don't have this option. So I have this all the way maxed out at 20. It doesn't show me 20, of course, but it can do. What that means is in this all day section, you can see I've got a task in the all day section. I can left click, type task, and create a new task in the all day section, but I can do this up until 20. If I move this all the way down to 2, you can see now I've got the task, a due, and then I've got 2 more. So I left click and then it shows me what's in my all day section, which I personally don't like. I want to actually see them. If I go to the week view, again, it's showing +2, +1. If I go to the month view, you can see we've got +22, +27, +27, +31. So if I change the limit to 20, now you can see it's actually going to show me 20 things in a day. Now, I don't personally show my habits and my tasks in the same calendar. That's where I use the 2 calendar set. So when I push number 2 on my keyboard, it's now showing just the events and tasks. But most of the time when I'm in the month view, I'm actually doing long planning, which obviously reduces it quite significantly, but short planning is still possible inside of the 2 set. There's a bit of the behind the scenes. You can see I had to take my dad somewhere, so my recording time for this video got reduced quite significantly, and I have other things I need to do. So I'm going to skip to the Obsidian integration, just so I can plan myself and manage what's going on for the rest of the week, which I can either do from the sidebar, which you can see connect a task integration, or go down to preferences and then go into the local integration for Obsidian. So if I push connect to task integration, it will take me to the external accounts, which is where you'd normally add an external task integration, but because Obsidian is local, it's uniquely local, I can go to Obsidian and then connect a vault. For those of you that use Obsidian, find your vault wherever you have it stored. I have it in my G drive, obs folder, and then I want my research vault, so I'm going to select folder, and it's now connected all of my Obsidian tasks. Now, because I've done this before, a lot of this was already preset, so it's sort of just put my settings in. But when you do it for the first time, you'll be asked to install the Morgen Tasks plugin. This essentially puts an ID on all of the task blocks inside of Obsidian, which I'll show you in a minute. You then have note inclusion controls, so include notes by default or exclude notes by default. So if I exclude notes by default, I then have to tell Morgen what tasks to include. This global task filter comes from the Obsidian Tasks plugin. If you do use the Obsidian Task plugin, you can use the global task filter to bring tasks into Morgen. If I change this to include notes by default, it's going to include all of my notes, but it's going to exclude anything that I've put in the excluded files. So if I go into Obsidian very quickly, you can see this is the video. I'm ticking them off as I've done them. This is the main task. This is the ID that the Obsidian Task plugin added. Well, actually, Morgen technically added it, but this is the syntax from the Obsidian tasks. If I go to settings, files and links, you can see excluded files. The templates folder is in the excluded files, and that's what Morgen is detecting. So push Alt-C, excluded files, that's the templates folder. So that's automatically being detected by Morgen. Ignore directory, so I can add to that and pick any folder that's inside of my vault. And I'm actually going to do that for the Eastbourne Trampoline directory. So any file inside of the Eastbourne Trampoline folder directory won't be given a task ID, so the task won't appear inside of Morgen. And this is actually Obsidian users here. This is a vault inside of a vault, so I don't want the task inside of this vault to show inside of my Morgen. Hence, I've added Eastbourne Trampoline as an ignore directory, but I don't want it to be ignored files inside of Obsidian. And because we're currently including all of the notes, if your Obsidian vault is huge, maybe you want to exclude some old notes. So import tasks from all notes, or only import from notes modified in the last 30 days. For cleanup purposes, I would recommend import tasks from all notes so you can get rid of those tasks or complete those tasks that you've forgotten about or you'd lost. But if you know there's going to be thousands in there that you don't want to manage, only import from notes modified in the last 30 days. Now, even with the includes notes by default, you can still use the task inclusion global task filter from the Obsidian Task plugin. And as you can see, the automatic task ID insertion, I have this turned on. So add IDs to imported tasks. This means that Morgen is going to look through all of those files that it's allowed to look through and just add this ID and then the ID on the task automatically. But you can make this manual, so only import tasks with existing IDs. So instead of me, let's say, create a task, new task inside of Obsidian, this is the Obsidian Task plugin. At the moment, when I go back to Morgen, and then let's just put this in the side view. Oh, it's already done it. It will automatically add the ID to the task because of the setting. If I come down to the settings and say only import tasks with existing IDs, remove this ID, then go back into Morgen, you can see the ID is not being added. And when I go to the Obsidian tasks, let's add a due date so it's easier to see. Let's say it's due today. Now when I go to Morgen, it would show in due today if the task was being found, but it's not being found because there's no ID on it. So I need to manually add the ID. So let's generate a unique ID. Now go into Morgen and there's the new task, which if I tick done, it will complete. And you can see it's added the completed date to it as well, because right at the bottom, I have it set done date on completed task, example that. So it's just added the completed task on the bottom. For those curious about the requirements, you don't have to have them, but they make life far easier. So the Obsidian Task plugin, as you saw, lets you add IDs, add due dates, and add other information to tasks in Obsidian easier, and the emoji task format is needed for obviously the ID. So let's just delete that task, add a new task. If I was to add a due date, I can go DU and then due date in 3 days. Now I've added in the date. This makes life easier when doing things inside of Obsidian. new task to do, and I haven't changed the setting to automatically add the IDs back, so I have to manually do that. I will do that. I'm lazy. Morgan, please do this for me. Yes, add IDs and connect. Thank you. There we go. So now the new task is added in and it's due on Friday. That is the due date that's currently inside of Morgan. For those of you vigilant, I've also got the task for this morning that I was meant to be recording, which I've done. You can see if I click there, it then opens up well, it's already open. Let's close that down so you can actually see it in action. Open it up. Now it's opened up the file because we've got the link. Now I've actually done this task, so I'm going to complete this one done, but it's not going to finish it. It's not going to complete it because there's multiple sessions. And when I carry on recording this video, I'll go into more detail. So I am back and I'm going to talk about the Obsidian integration. You can see I've got the Morgen for Obsidian's video. It is also up here inside of the all-day events as Morgen for Beginners. We've got 12 hours in there, and if I click on this Obsidian button, it's opened up this file inside of my Obsidian, and if we have a look into it, you can see this is the task that's showing in Morgen. I've got the name of the task here, so this is Morgen for Beginners. That's the title of the task, which you can see is shown inside the sidebar. I then have 12 hours. That's the 12 hours here, and inside of Morgen and all of the external integrations, the task estimate can be added in the title. So if I go over to the Morgen Task quickly, if I go to Christmas gifts and go into estimate, you can see I can add in the time estimate. For Obsidian, there isn't a property inside of a task to add a time estimate, so you can do it inside of the title, which, to reiterate, is also available in all the other integrations, Todoist, Notion, ClickUp, etc. I then have a tag on the task, and you can see this is what I'm currently grouping these tasks by. I'll go through some of those settings in a minute. The due date is a property that's been added onto the Morgen Task, which, as you can see, the 6th of December, it's being shown. And if I open this up in full view, go to the week by pushing W, and then go right arrow key to go to next week, you can see 6th, there it is, Morgen for Beginners, that is the due date. If I left click, just like all of the other due dates, I can then block a time on the calendar, I can open up the task. If I block on the calendar, what it's going to do is, there you go, create a block for that on the calendar. This is a long block because this is, according to the title, a long task. Now, I don't actually want that there, so I'm going to delete it, which, if you'll remember, unschedules the task. It doesn't actually delete the task. I'm going to go back to today, D, T, drag it over, and then Alt-C to close it down. And then we have the ID on the Obsidian task, so Morgen can actually see it. Below, we have new task 2 to do, and this is also showing inside of Morgen. The due date is the 29th, which is in a couple of days, which, if we go to due soon, is showing right here. And this is a task I'm going to play with for a second. So if I push 9 on my keyboard, I go to the example calendar, I can now left click and drag this task into the calendar, and now I've scheduled that task on the calendar. It's defaulted to the task calendar, of course, but I'm going to double click, go into tasks, change it to example 1, yes, confirm. Now when I push 9, you can see I now have the new task to do, which is an Obsidian task, in the example 1 calendar. And what I want to emphasize here is now I have, if I double click, a planned start and planned end date on this task for the 27th at 11:10 to 11:40. That's not being shown in Obsidian because that's a planned date, not a due date. The due date is the 29th. This is a planned start and planned end. If I was to go to tomorrow and do the same thing, schedule another time slot, let's put it in there. And again, double click and change this to the example 5 calendar, for example. Push 9 to go to that calendar set. I can double click and now I have a different planned start and planned end on the 28th from 6:30 till 7. Again, also not synced to Obsidian because it's a planned date, not a due date. Inside of Obsidian, you can add a start date inside of the Obsidian task plugin. Let's say today is the start date. And you can also add a schedule date, so let's say tomorrow. But at the time of recording, the start date and the schedule date don't sync to Morgen. If I go into the task edit window, which is sort of hidden by Morgen, let's just move that over, you can see we've got more than the priorities inside of Morgen as well. We do have recurring option, but we've got the due date, schedule date, and start date, but the due date is the only one synced to Morgen at this time. The done date can be created from Morgen, as you would have seen earlier, but the cancel and the created are specific to Obsidian. But now if we go up to the view settings, we've got edit, Obsidian, import preferences. Let's go back to the settings we saw before. The group by, you can see we've got tag. That's because Morgen brings in all the available information it can. So we've got status, priority, note, and tag. Status, if we close down the due list, you can see to do, and then in progress, I don't have anything in progress. But if I go into Obsidian, you can see I've got some different icons. This is an X and this is a slash. Going into the Obsidian task plugin setting and scrolling down, you'll see we've got task status. Core status is to do. and done, and then custom status, there is an option to have in progress and then various other task statuses which you can add with the Obsidian task plugin. In here it's showing in progress. I haven't changed any CSS inside of Obsidian, so it just looks like it's done. So by clicking on add minimal theme, I've now added in all of these different statuses from the minimal theme. If I then go to appearance, go to themes, click on minimal. If you don't already have minimal, you can go to manage, then install the minimal theme. Now you'll notice the theme of my Obsidian has changed and the task is now in progress. You'll notice it's showing in progress. When I go to Morgen, now we've got to do in progress. This is the in progress task. Just to clarify, view, I'm grouping by status. If I go into the task plugin, you see we've got the question here. This is a question type. If I go to edit, the task symbol is a question. The task name is question, understandably. The task next status symbol is a cross, and what that means is if I look for the cross, you can see this is the cross symbol, so it will be done type done. So let's go back to edit just for clarity. The task next status, so when I've got a question, the next status will be done, so it goes from question to done, and the task status type is to do. You can see inside the source mode I have a question icon. It's showing inside the minimal theme as a question icon. You'll notice inside of Morgen it's not picking it up yet because it doesn't have all of the custom statuses available, because obviously that's basically every symbol on the keyboard. But once you complete the task, it gets completed, which turns it into an X. If we then uncomplete it, it's now a task to do, which if I then go to search, type in question, you can see there's a question task, which is inside of here because Morgen can pick that one up. Now, something worth noting is if you go to the core statuses, you can see I've changed this. So it goes from to do to the in progress symbol, and this is still to do. So it will go from to do, then to in progress, then done. So inside of Obsidian, if I go, this is to do, then it goes in progress, then done. You'll notice on the side, empty, then it goes in progress, then it goes to done. If this is to do, and we go to Morgen, it will show that this is to do. If I complete it from Morgen, if we have a look at this task, it goes straight to done. It skips the in progress bit because the in progress bit is done inside of Obsidian, not Morgen right now. I recognize there could be lots of questions on this, so let me know in the comment section below and we can have a conversation about task statuses. Then something else inside of Obsidian, which we have. So if I go to Obsidian recurring task, you can see I can actually add a repeat. So let's say this is every day and I want this to be due today. When I go into Obsidian, you can see the recurring task is due today, so it shows up in the due list. We've now got the due visualization showing, but it's not been scheduled. Remember, the planned dates are different from the due dates. If I complete this task inside of Morgen, it will complete it inside of Obsidian, and now it's going to show, yes, look, every day it's created a new task for tomorrow, saying the Obsidian recurring task is now due tomorrow, because this is the newly generated task inside of Obsidian. And that will be the same for all of the recurring tasks because it's focused on the due date. If, however, I remove the due date, you can see it's got an error saying due, scheduled, or start date is required. If I add a start date to this Obsidian task, now go to Morgen, you can see as the start date isn't synced, it's not showing inside of Morgen. Well, it is if I go, let's just add a tech tag to that so it's easy to find. You can see there it is. So it is showing inside of Morgen, it just the scheduled date doesn't show in Morgen. So when you complete the task done, it then creates a new task for tomorrow on the scheduled date, but the scheduled date again isn't synced, so it doesn't actually change much inside of Morgen. I'm going to delete these because I don't actually want all of these. And while we're here, if I create two task blocking and blocked, I can go ID, depends on ID, and then this one. So what this is doing is this one is blocked, you see the icon, by this one. So this first task is blocking the second task from being completed. Inside of Obsidian, you can't actually visually see the difference on here because it's just the text. But if I use the task queries, so I'm looking for tasks that is blocked, you can see the second task is blocked. And this is where I can go in and say is blocking, and now this task is blocking this one from being completed. So when I tick it off and then look for tasks that is blocked, you'll notice that the second task doesn't appear because it's no longer blocked. At the time of recording, this ID and this blocking ID information isn't available inside of Morgen. If we go to view and then group by priority, we've got highest, high, medium, default, low, and lowest. So it can group by all 6 levels of priority. even though when we go back to Morgen and we have a look at the importance priority property, there's only high, medium, normal, and low. We can group by the priorities of Obsidian. Something worth noting at this point is the AI planner uses high, medium, low, and no priority, which I will cover later on, but Morgen can see the information. Then if we go by note, this is the actual file, the Obsidian file. So you can see this is one file with one task, one file with one task. So all I've done is added a task to the file inside of Obsidian, the setup, which I'll go through in a second. But if I go into the filtering, you can see group filtering and sorting is not available for more than 50 groups. And because I have more than 50 notes or 50 files, it doesn't actually give me the option to show all or hide all. I've just got to show them all, which is why I don't use note. But if you are someone that has big projects and have just, say, Morgen for Beginners as a file that it can see. So maybe inside of the settings, you only include big notes with lots of tasks in. So there's only 5 or 6 files with tasks. You would then be able to group by note and then have the 5 or 6 big files with all the tasks in there. I don't have that. I'm not going to reorganize my hundreds of files to show you. So use your imagination. Then we have the tag. The tag is what I currently use because, as you can see, I've got sport. So these are projects related to the sport YouTube channel. Idea, which are ideas that I don't know whether they'd go sport or tech. Then I have tech, which obviously at the moment, this is the video I'm working on. And that is the tag right here in the menu. And then I have no tag. And because this task doesn't have a tag, this task is in the no tag group. If I go to the due soon section, you can see new task to do doesn't have a tag display label. Remember, if we go to the view, go down, we've got status, priority identifier, note, due date, and tag. This is all the information Obsidian shows. And here I'm showing tag, which is why it says sport on that one, but it doesn't have anything on the new task. If I was to go to Obsidian, go hash, and then tech, go back into Morgen, you can see it's added that tech tag, and now inside of tech, we've got that task showing. If I turn on all of the display labels, you can see we've got the note path, so projects, end of Guardiola, to do is the status, sport is the tag, Sunday is the due date, but I don't need to see the status, I don't need to see the identifier or the note, but I keep priority, due date, and tag showing. Again, I show the due dates on the calendar, but this setting is unique. It is specific to the Obsidian due dates. So if I go to the week view, you can see we've got new task to do. This is an Obsidian task. If I go to the view settings and turn this off, I'm now hiding all of the Obsidian task due dates. If I turn that on, then go to my Obsidian tasks, and then hide them, I can now hide the Morgen specific due dates. So the due dates can be shown or hidden for the task source that you're using. However, if I turn off the list down the bottom, you can see they've gone from Obsidian, and if I go to Morgen, they've also gone from Morgen. If I turn them on in the Morgen setting, it's now showing all the lists and the scheduled tasks, and I go back to Obsidian, it's now showing all the lists and the scheduled tasks. As a reminder, as this task has multiple sessions, I can see that here, multiple sessions. Next is today at like right now. But if I tick this done, it will then update itself and then say next session is tomorrow at 6:30, and that is correct. So if I tick that one done, you can see now all the sessions are in the past or completed, but the task is still here, as I mentioned earlier, because maybe you want to schedule it again. I personally find this really useful because I have the due date, so I can see that it's due on Friday. I personally leave it in the task sidebar, and let's say I move this to today, I can then see, oh, yep, I've actually completed everything for this, and then tick it complete. But before I do that, how I actually manage these projects, if I drag this over here, is that I use the all day section to show my project progress. If I drag that task into the all day section, let's move it to the example 2 calendar and drag this across. I can now see in the all day section, this is a task, this is a project that I'm working on, and that is when it is due. And then all of these scheduled slots I have actually completed. And if I hover over, you can see it says multiple sessions. Next is last Monday at 12. Now it says 12 because it adds a time to it, but last Monday. So I know I started the project last Monday, in which case is actually just a couple of days ago, which gives me an idea of how long I've been working on the project for, but also tells me that I'm still inside of the planned time that I'm working on it for. Once I've finished the project or I've finished all the work I need to do on the project, I will tick it off. And another one of the reasons for keeping this inside the sidebar, which I like, is if I'm working on projects with other people, they might have something they're working on, so it's not completely finished, but all the stuff I need to do is done. So I'm going to tick this off, and to give you some real world examples, I'm going to push calendar set 1. It'll show me my calendars, and you can see I'm currently working on these 3 projects, which, as you can see, if I double click, this is in the sport YouTube calendar. It's an Obsidian task. But if you look at the title, hearing difficulty paper, it's in the sport YouTube calendar. But if we have a look in the day, I'm actually working on this later, which is here. It's a 4-hour task. I've actually taken the 4-hour out of the title. But this task here that's scheduled is in a different calendar. What this allows me to do is, as I mentioned earlier with the calendar sets, if I push 3, it hides my day, but I can see the plan. So this is my long-term planning, which if I go to M, I'm now in the month view. If I click on the hearing paper, you can see this isn't actually due until next week on Sunday, and I have the project going from Monday all the way through till next Saturday, because that's when I'm working on it. If I was to go to 2 and show my short-term planning, I would actually go to my week. I can now see the tasks for when I'm actually working on the project, but I don't see all of the other habits and events and things that I want to do, which is where I go to calendar set 1 for actual day working. You can see lunch, wash up, exercise, dog meds, etc. Quickly going back to the view settings, organize, you can organize by the same information, and the sort ordering, I use the due date, but you can use all of those pieces of information to order if you want. But for me, I focus on due dates because that's when you actually got to get stuff done by. Now, next up, I actually want to add another integration or a couple of integrations because this morning I forgot that I hadn't added them, so I'm going to add them now before I forget. So I'm going to go into the external accounts. I'm going to add an account. I don't want to connect a calendar. I actually want to connect some task integrations. So I want to connect Google Tasks. I'm going to sign in with Google, select my Google account, continue, authentication succeeded. And I'm going to wait for the open, click on open, and you can see now Google Tasks is available on this computer and is connected to the cloud, so will be available on mobile, booking links, workflows, and team. And so at the top inside of the task, I can now click on Google Tasks, and here are some tasks from Google. Much like the Obsidian integration, if I go to view, I can then group by information. My Google Task has the task list grouping option, then organize. I don't have anything to organize by because Google Tasks doesn't give you that many options. Again, I'm ordering by due date. There's not really much other ordering options. And you can see I have very few task lists. The display labels are also limited, and these settings are still synced across all of the task list sources. But the reason I want Google Tasks in here is because you can add a Gmail and an email to Google Tasks very quickly, which is what I do to bring my Gmail emails into Morgen. And a quick note before I hop over there is now you can see Google Tasks as an integration. You'll also notice a refresh button has appeared at the top if you want to manually refresh the task integration, which is separate from fetching updates from all of the calendars, which is the refresh button you will have previously seen. I'm going to blur out most of this because these are my personal emails, but you can see this is a notification from a Substack. It's a Substack that I keep my eye on, and if I want to add this to my Google Task, I can use the hotkey Shift-T, and you see it brings up my Google Task in a sidebar. It adds the title of the email and links to the email, and then I can click on the date and add the date. You can see I can add a time if I want. I can make it repeated, but it's just an email that I need to get done. So I click on OK, and that's it. So when I go back to Morgen and have a look at my due today, you'll notice I've got 2. I've got a Raycon email and I need to follow up with, and then I've got the Substack, which you just saw me add. It's in the My Task list and it's due for today. What you will notice is now I have 3 different task sources. I have Morgen, I have Google Tasks, and I have Obsidian. This is where when searching for tasks, you may want to go for the filtered search option or going into the custom filters and selecting a source. So maybe you want Morgen due today tasks, Obsidian due today tasks, and then Google Tasks due today tasks, which is now showing those 3 tasks that are due for today. You could also add to this, so maybe you want to see all of your Google Tasks, and then just the due from Morgen, and then the due from Obsidian. And then if you go to the top and then search for whatever it is, so you can see I need to do the paid, obviously, for today, and then I need to check tax payments, because, yeah, fun taxes. So the filtering options look through all of the sources of tasks. Now, I personally don't use this. I use the AI Planner, which I will share later on how I use that. But something else I really like about the Google Tasks is that if I go into Google Docs, for example, or anyone goes into Google Docs, types an @ and then adds a task, you can see task made in Google Docs. I can assign a person. So I've assigned myself to this task via the email. This is my Google Task email. Let's say date is tomorrow. Assign as task. Now inside of this Google Doc, I have a task which is assigned for me for tomorrow. If I have a look at Google Tasks, you can see it's showing in Google Tasks and is also appearing in Morgen. So you can make a task inside of a Google Doc assigned in Docs, assign a task to a person, and then when you go to your Morgen account with the Google Task integration, let's just add a due date so it's easy to find. It appears inside of Morgen. If I create a couple of tasks, so let's just say this is a different task due then, and let's add this one due for tomorrow. And then let's just show you the refresh. It's not actually going to add those tasks because it's not been assigned to me. So the Google Task account doesn't recognize it as a task for me to do. So Morgen doesn't show it. Then, as you can imagine, if I tick the task off inside of Morgen, it completes the task inside of Google Tasks and inside of Google Docs. So let's just complete that one off. And you can see now it's completed inside of the Google Doc. The next integration that I want to bring in, if we go to add account, is Outlook email. I'm going to sign in with Microsoft. Again, you're going to use the Morgen email. Authentication succeeded. Open up Morgen. And now inside of the integrations, I have Outlook email as available on this computer and on all of the others. And this is different from the calendar. Now, if I go into my Outlook email, you can see I've got an email, I've been invited to something. So what I'm going to do is actually flag it. And when I flag this email and head over to Morgen, go to Outlook, you can see Morgen brings in the flagged email from Outlook. If I go to the view settings, again, I'm limited because Outlook doesn't share that much information. So there's no grouping options. The ordering is just who the email's from. Filtering is just all tasks from, and then they are synced across. But this allows me to see my emails inside of Morgen as a task. If I click, I can then open in the web Outlook, which after loading takes me to the email. If I go to one of the Google Tasks, you can see opening Google Tasks, it's still the same option. So I can go back to the email through the Google Task, whereas in Outlook, it goes directly back to the email. When you tick the task done inside of Morgen, it then inside of the email unflags the email. And then I'm actually going to archive this because I'm done. So now that I have those task integrations done, I'm going to head back into Morgen settings rather than integrations for a bit. And I'm going to go down to the open invites. You can see I've got a few expired invites and then some booked invites. If I click on the three dots, you can see I can delete all of the links and I can delete all of the links of the expired invites. When I open up the list, it then shows me different invites that I've created. But if I look at the top of this option, you can see I've got a help option and then a plus. If I push the plus, it changes the sidebar and down the bottom says select available times on your calendar. So what I'm doing is saying, hey, I'm going to be available in this time. And I think I'm going to be available in this time. Let's just say I want a quick catch up with someone from the Morgen team. It's showing the available slots. So there's two. There's this one I created 1 till 5 and this one from 7 till 9. It's showing that as text, which I can copy as text and paste in an email or paste in a message somewhere. I've got my time zone because obviously I'm making it, so it's working from my time zone. It's going to be a 30-minute meeting slot that they can book. I can invite someone via email inside of the attendee slot. But because I'm in a team, I get an additional option here which says add teammates as co-hosts. So if, for example, I wanted to host a meeting with Marco, so Marco and myself both want to be hosting this meeting with a person or someone to talk about, say, Discord. I can invite the Discord community member whilst also checking the schedule of Marco to toggle on and off their availability to see if they're actually available. I can click the three dots and say fixed co-host required or optional. So maybe it would be good if Marco turned up, but he doesn't really need to. But maybe I actually want Brenner to be there. So Brenner is definitely a co-host and Marco is optional. And I can see Marco is fine for the 2 available slots I've made, but Brenner is actually a little bit busy here. And that will change the available slots being shown. But before I get there, I could add a location, a physical location, or a video conferencing link. So Zoom or Google Meets. I want this to go into my events calendar. If I left click, I can choose any of the calendars I've connected that I have edit permissions on, so I can only see one calendar in the Outlook because I can't edit the birthdays calendar. Now, something I forgot to show while I was actually recording that bit was what it looks like. So I've made the schedule a little bit different. It's now 2 till 6 and then 7:05 till 9. If I update and copy link, you can see what I've done is I've just pasted the link down here. So when I click it, it opens up the booking page. If I click on the 28th, it goes from 2 all the way through till 8:15. And that's due to some of the settings that I have down here in the advanced section, which I went through in the booking links. But if I add a teammate again, so Marco, and he is actually a co-host, you can see he's blocking time off for this available slot. So when I save the link, now when I go to the schedule link after a refresh, you can see it actually starts at 3:15 because Marco's obviously busy in the earlier one. If I come back and edit that again, and let's say that Marco is actually an optional, but I want Brenna as a co-host definitely. See, Brenna is far more busy than Marco at that time of the day. So update and copy link. Now when I push the refresh button on the scheduling link, go to the 28th, there's far less opportunity because Marco is still available, so this slots are there because it's optional, but anything after that obviously Brenna can't make, so it's reduced the slots to match the two that need to be there and then the optional with Marco. Now if we hover down to the booking page, you can see I've got a link to my booking page. I can click the link. I'm just going to paste it somewhere so you can see what it looks like. That's what the link looks like, and then when I click it, it takes me to a booking page which shows different options, and you'll notice the paid coaching and the free chat are both public links on the booking page, but I have 4 private links. If I click on the 3 dots, you can see I can remove from booking page. I could just embed the code, and then of course I can edit the link and delete it. So you can add or take away from the booking page. When I go into the free chat, I've got some script down the side. I've got 30 minutes and then meeting held via Zoom, which if I go into edit link, you can see this is a recurring scheduling link. So these are the slots each week that I want to be available. Similar with the open invites, I can copy this as text. Time zone, I then have a 30-minute meeting. That's how long I want it. I don't want to add any teammates because this is just for me. Location, I leave empty. Video conferencing, I actually want to generate a new meeting inside of Zoom for this, but because I've disconnected it, it's not showing. So I'm going to add that now before I forget. Go to preferences, go to the external accounts, go to add account, click Zoom, sign in with Zoom, then make sure that I allow permissions. Authentication succeeded, will direct you back to Morgen, open. And now I have Zoom as an integrated account. When I come into video conferencing, you can see Zoom and then generate a new meeting link. I previously had that option with Google Meet because automatically connected to Google, but now I have Zoom. It will create a new meeting in Zoom each time someone books something rather than having to use my personal room each time, which is what I personally prefer. Then if we go to show advanced, I don't want people to book anything 4 weeks after today because I don't know what I'm doing that far ahead of time. You can adjust this to 1 through to 16, no sooner than 24 hours. So it gives me 24 hours notice at least. If someone wants to book something, you can have no minimum notice, which means someone can book literally in a couple of minutes, or you can go hours, days, and weeks. The buffer time, I have 15 minutes. You can have no buffer. You can adjust this. And as you see in the icon, a buffer before and after existing events. By default, no buffer is added. So this means that if someone books an event or a call, I have at least 15 minutes of buffer before someone else can book another call. This is the time between offered slots. So I have 30 minutes between offered slots. And you can see by the information, the default is the time the slot is available. So it's 30 because it's a 30-minute meeting. If I change it to a 40-minute meeting, you can see now time between is 40 minutes, but I can change this to 5. So if I go update and copy link, now go to tomorrow, you can see there are 5-minute differences between all of the slots, but the meeting is still 40 minutes, so someone can book for 1:35. I'm now going to change this back to 30 because I want it to be a 30-minute meeting, and I personally leave this to event duration because I don't like having tons of options available. And then the option down the bottom here is slots start at any time, quarter hour, half past the hour, full on the hour. I'm personally not that fussed, partly because 30 minutes normally is on the hour or half past the hour. To make a new link, you can go to push the plus button and you get all these setting options available. You've got the alerts, you've got the link to the calendar, which you can adjust, the option to show in the booking page, yes or no, and then we get to checking availability. So when I push on this option, you can say, do not check availability. Check availability in the busy calendars that you have in the settings, or go and actually adjust your busy calendars. If I go into the free chat booking link and edit the link, you'll notice at the moment that it's not checking any of the calendars because, as I mentioned at the start of the video, I disconnected them all. So I'm going to configure the busy calendars, which is this availability setting inside of the preferences. I want it to check my personal events calendar, and I want it to check my work events calendar. But something worth noting is, as you can see up here, if it's marked as free, it will not block availability. So I'm going to exit out of this. You can see now it's checking 2 busy calendars. You can say don't check or check the 2 available and then configure the settings. You will also notice I have 2 alerts here. I have one 10 minutes before and then one for hours before. This one is for the invitee, so not me, but the invitee gets a notification 1 hour before. So it sort of reminds them, hey, you need to do this. And then both of us get a notification 10 minutes before. If I have a look at my calendar at the moment for today, you can see there are 4 slots available in the free chat. If I go in and create an event, and let's just say it's blocked. Now when I come in and refresh the booking slot, go to the 28th, didn't change anything because this is today. Let's move that over to the 28th and now refresh. You'll notice the slots have gone for the 28th because it's no longer available. If we Alt-C, go across, it's now blocked. Now when I come into here and then change this to free, save, it's changed the color on the calendar, so it's not actually like a dark color. So it's showing that this is free, whereas this is actually blocked because I'm not here. Now when I refresh, go to the 28th, those slots are now available because even though it's in a busy calendar, it's in my events busy calendar, it's not actually busy. So the event would need to be in a busy calendar that's being checked by Morgan and actually set as busy to block out the time available to be scheduled. It's a really nice thing to have a development team develop as quickly as Morgan do, but as a creator, it can be a little bit annoying. So about halfway through this video, there has actually been some updates to Morgan, and I'm going to go through a couple of them now, but as you move forwards there may be other things that look a little bit different towards the later part of this video than the beginning because of, like, say, updates and changes and things like that. You will also notice it is a completely different day and lots of other things have happened. So if I go into preferences and I scroll down, you can see regional format. There is a switch to 24 hours or to 12 hours now, which makes it easier with the regional format switching. You can see United States to United Kingdom, and it goes, you can see there, 9, and then, oh, that was probably a bad example, 151 to 1351. You can see you can switch between the two now. And inside of the general shortcuts, you can increase calendar time resolution and reduce time resolution by using the square brackets. So this setting where you've got time resolution from 5, 15, 30 to 1 hour, instead of having to come into preferences, if I go into this view, I can push the bracket. You see it's zoomed in. I go again, it's zoomed in even more. And then let's just push it lots to go all the way out to an hour. So it's easier to zoom in with the brackets than it was before. Now to round up some of the availability settings, we've gone through the availability here, and then if I go to the booking page, you can adjust things from the booking page. So you can see I've got my personal link, Danny Hatcher, I've got the title, I've got the description, I can disable or enable the white labeling, it doesn't bother me, so I keep it on. I add a custom brand color, and I don't personally add a logo because I don't bother, but you can do if you want to. And then related to that is the conferencing links. If I go to add an account, you can see video conferencing. I've already got Zoom in there, and then I've already got Google Meets in there because it automatically works once you've added a Google Calendar. You can then also add WebEx. I'm going to sign in with WebEx and sign in. Authentication succeeded. Redirect to Morgan. And now you can see WebEx is available and connected. I can then also add Microsoft Teams. Sign in with Microsoft. Next, authentication succeeded, and open, and now I have Microsoft Teams available and connected. If I zoom out, let's come in and make a new event, go to conferencing, you can see I can make a Teams meeting link, a WebEx, a Zoom, or a Google Meets, depending on what's going on, and then of course my Zoom room at the top. Something while editing I also realized is you can see you can actually make an open invite from here. So if I was to save this event, now double click, you can see it's been saved as an event, so you can't change it into an open invite. However, if I'm in a quick conversation with someone and I say, hey, later I might be available, just drag it down, go to open invite, and you see it's changed that event slot into an open invite. It's turned into blocked, and then you can just create copy link. You can see it's generated a quick one, so it's blocked, go in there, and there's the 30-minute sessions because I made it a 30-minute block over to the side. So you see 30 minutes, so I just dragged open invite, changed it to 30 minutes, and now we're all good to go. But I don't actually want that, so I'm going to delete that. So next I want to go through these workflows. So I'm going to click on the workflow button. You can see it's redirecting me to my browser. And this takes me to a web page outside of the Morgen app. In the left-hand side, I'm currently in the home section. And what you'll see in this main view is the Morgen team that I'm in, sharing insights from this week. If I click on workflows, there is a workflow gallery, and then my workflows. Looking at the workflow gallery, we've got the team meeting organizer, calendar propagation, automated time travel, buffer time, and then a couple in beta testing. So we're going to go to my workflows and then go through the ones that I personally use. So if I go to the automated travel time, I've added a workflow name, so driving time, because I want this to be how long it takes me to drive to a certain place. I add a target calendar, and these are the calendars I tell Morgan to check to add travel time to. Now, because example 1, I don't want travel time in there, I don't check it. School dates don't need to or anything like that. I don't really need travel time for tasks because I'm not going anywhere, so I only have it for events. Maybe your work calendar is also where you would want to have some travel time going to, but I'm not within driving distance of Morgan's. Then you add your departure location. Obviously, I'm going to blur that out so you don't know where I live. And then you add travel type. Here you can see travel to the location only, so it's just a one way, so that's the travel time before, and then travel time to and from, so that's before and afterwards. And then you can pick travel modes. As you can see, it's driving, that's why I call it driving time, but you could, if you walk to places, have walking or cycle or public transportation, and it will work out how long it's going to take you and create an event for that length of time. If you're in a place that has lots of traffic, for example, additional buffer time can be added, so 5, 10, 15, 20, if you think that it's actually going to take a little bit longer than what, say, Google Maps suggests. Some points worth noting is that you can see here, travel time is created for all events with a location, so the location needs to be added to the event. When events are rescheduled, travel time will also shift, assuming you haven't adjusted any of the events, because if you move them, Morgan assumes you have done something to them deliberately, so it's not going to automatically adjust it afterwards. And if the travel time to location is more than 5 hours, travel time will not be created or scheduled. Then, as a quick, disclaimer, this image isn't representative of what you might see because these are different colors to the line. If we have a look at my Morgan on Friday, you can see I've got a couple of events with locations in. So this is Eastbourne Trampoline and this is at a college that I'm going to. The travel time event has been created in the same calendar. So if I double click on the event, you can see it's in the events calendar. If I double click on the travel time, you can see it's also in the events calendar and a notification saying this was automatically created by Morgan. And then you can go to the workflow settings from here. But if I go to this level 1, double click and add an event tag, you can see now it's blue, so I save. Now I have that blue looking event, which looks similar. Oh, it's the other way around. They've done travel time, but you get the point. If you add a tag, it changes the color of the event. If I remove the tag and actually say I'm free for this one, save, only this occurrence, go to travel time, add event, save, and let's just zoom in. You can now see after zooming in a little bit, this is now a transparent event because it's free. This is an event that's got a tag on it, which makes it look similar to that image. So I'm going to save this. I can then add a workflow, and you can see automated travel time is manage, not create, because you can only have one. So I've got one of those. Same with the buffer time, I've only got one of those. So if I click on manage, you can see over time, this is the buffer time. I currently have this turned off because I don't actually use buffer time. When I go to edit workflows, it is very similar to the travel time. You can name it, add your target calendars. Do you want it before or after? Then you can select for short meetings. So short meetings, you want a 15-minute reflection afterwards, or buffer time before, or 10 minutes or 5 minutes. Short meetings being 30 minutes or less. And long meetings being 30 minutes or more, maybe you want a longer reflection or a longer buffer. So if I head over to tomorrow, add in an event, call it meeting. So if I turn this on, go into Morgan, in tomorrow, let's say I want to have a meeting with David. You can see I can check the availability, collapse, etc., but I can send this. Apologies, David. But you can see now a buffer time has been created for this meeting, and that's 15 minutes because that's what I had, a 15-minute buffer time for short meetings, and it's 30, and I actually had 15 minutes for both, so you couldn't really tell the difference. But you'll notice because I've activated the workflow, it's automatically added a buffer time for the stand-up and for this other meeting in the future. But I don't actually want any of those, so I'm going to turn this overflow off, and you see this button down in the bottom, it says Clean Calendar. So if I click Clean Calendar, then select the calendar that they will have been put on, there's all the buffers. And I don't personally want any of those, so I'm going to delete. And now the events to delete is none, because they've gone. If I open up Morgan, you can see meeting, there is no buffer there, there's no buffer there, and they've all gone. Now I'm actually going to delete this, so delete the meeting. And to show you the travel time event, if I select a time here, let's just type in gym, go to location, and then add a location in. I'm going to save it. So now I've got a gym event with a location in the travel time workflow that is inside. Oh, there it is. So the travel time workflow will add a travel time from my location to the location of the event. If I then click and drag this event, let's say I'm going to do that here, because I haven't touched any of the travel time events, they should automatically, there you go, move to where the event has been moved to. Then if I left click and delete the event, the travel time events will be deleted. And then we get to calendar propagation. And this one, as you can see, is a little bit different because there's multiple instances. You can have more than one of these workflows working at once. I'm going to go through the one that I personally use, but for those of you with various calendars, feel free to explore. So if we go to the edit workflow and scroll down, you can see you can add a workflow name. And then we have a source and destination calendar setting. First, we need to select a source calendar. So here I have my work calendar selected. What this means is Morgen is going to look for an event inside of this source calendar, my work calendar, and then it's going to try and create something in this destination calendar, which is my events calendar. Some workflows, like this calendar propagation, have additional settings. So here you can only propagate events marked as busy. So if there's a free event in my work calendar, it's not going to create something in my personal calendar. Or I wanted to propagate all of them. If I go into Morgen, you'll see stand up, and this is in my work calendar. You can see there it is, but it's also, this event is in another calendar. So if I switch, it's been created in my personal events calendar, which my family can see. Yes, they will see busy via Morgen, but they can see I'm in an event, i.e. in this case a meeting. This is where if I go to my calendars and then change the color of the events calendar to, let's say, blue for the moment, you'll notice the stand-up is in orange and blue because it's in my work calendar and my personal calendar, and they are merged because they are duplicate events. But I'm going to change that back. And for those of you that really want to explore, you can turn on nerd mode and then do loads of stuff with code and be specific about various things. There are some Morgen developer docs here for you to have a look at, but I wouldn't bother with any of this unless you know what you're doing with JavaScript. And while we're here, I figured I'd go into personal preferences inside of this web page, because this is where you can set personal preferences for the team. You can see my busy calendar, which is going to be checked by the team, is the work calendar, and then the personal events calendar. Your busy calendars are used to determine when you are busy and when you are available. If not set, Morgen won't consider your availability when scheduling events. That relates to the scheduling links and the booking links that I went through earlier. Now, you can add working hours. You can see mine's 9 till 9. I don't work all the way through that time because I'm on and off work all of the time, being online. But these are the main hours that I'm working from, despite getting up at like 7:30, 8. And then for lunch and break times, I have 12 till 1 and 7 till 8-ish as lunch and dinner. But as you can see, if I go to Morgen, let's zoom out. Actually, let's zoom out again and then turn on my one calendar. Dinner today is about 6 because we're watching the England women play football on TV, so it's come forwards. But these are more like rough guidelines than actually hard set rules. And now when I come back to Morgen, if I go just above my personal profile picture, I have a team option. If I click this, I have all the members of the team, which I can pin. So if I pin Marco, Brenner, David, Luke, and Andre, and then close that sidebar down, I can click on Marco's face to see what Marco is doing. So if we have a look at Marco, you can see he had a buffer slot after the stand-up. That was probably a buffer workflow. Then there's a private event. Maybe that was a meeting. Maybe he went somewhere. I don't know. A lunch block. Then sport, busy, and some other things that's going on. But I can see what Marco's doing by just pushing his face. If I push on Brenner, it's the same thing. I can see how busy Brenner is. If I push on David's face as well, it will now have a different color. So I've got yellow for Brenner, red for David. You can see David is very, very busy. And I can click on the faces and come straight back to my schedule, which is obviously really handy for if you want to make a meeting. So let's say I want to make a meeting and go, oh, open invite. This is roughly when I want to have the meeting. Let's just turn on a few people to see what's going on. Oh wait, look, David's obviously busy that whole time. Marco then starts to get busy at the end of that, and Brenner's busy most way through that. This is probably a really bad slot to have a meeting. Let's not do it then. So I can cancel and then cancel back out of this and actually change my mind. So now I want to go through some more of these integrations. Currently, these are the ones that I'm actively using. Oh, I'm actually missing one. If I go connect, add account, ClickUp, sign in with ClickUp, you can see I only have one workspace, but if you want to connect a different one, then click on the workspace. It's not selected. Select the workspace and then connect workspace. The integration then asks, do you want all tasks or tasks just assigned to me. I'm going to use all tasks so you can see everything for this purpose. Select imported spaces, so it's just the one space for me in this case, and then space configuration. I have a YouTube workspace because I have an editor, and then we have two different lists, one's social media, one's for videos for other projects. So we've got all of these working, and so I can push save, configuration saved, authentication succeeded, open Morgen, and now I have Clickup is available and connected. So if I head up to the task integration, I now have the Clickup sidebar view. So if we click on the view settings, same as all the other external integrations, we've got group by, no grouping, status, priority, tag, list, and folder, because Clickup has lists and folders, which some of the other integrations don't have. So if I click on folder, you can see all the tasks are just in the all tasks because we don't have any folders. If I click on list, I now have all the videos in the video list because we only got 3 in there at the moment. But then I can organize by status. And actually in this case, I want to group by status and then organize by list. And what this lets me do, as you can see, is I've got 3 things in to do, 1 in planning and 1 in progress. Then if I open up to do, I have the videos list, and when we have social media, there will be a social media list, so I can separate them. And you can see we've got edit video underneath this sticky criticism project and a subtask of that to test to see if subtasks of subtasks came in, and they do. You'll notice down in the hearing difficulty paper, there is edit video as a task. If I fold it shut, you can see it's just a normal task. And then we have subtasks. So my editor has obviously added these in when I wasn't looking, because this is what they've started using. They've started using Clickup for various other reasons. And as they also use Morgen, they can then drag the task onto the calendar. So it now has a scheduled time. If I drag it on again, it now has multiple sessions. And you can see both of these are just like all of the other tasks. You can open it up in Clickup. You can double click, change the name of the task, change the notes, but you'll notice it's locked. So tasks from external sources cannot be edited in the Morgen. But you'll notice I just changed the name. So what this lock actually means is you can't change certain fields such as the status or the list. That requires you to go back to Clickup and then actually change the status to whatever it is. So let's say we've changed it to planning. Now when I come back to Morgen, you can see the status is now in planning. If I tick the task done, you can see because Clickup has time tracking, you can say track time or don't track time. This one, I'm going to track time, and then to go back, I'm going to click on this one because they're the same task, and you can see it's been tracked for 30 minutes. If I subtask and then track time, you can see now track time is for an hour. If I then come up to status and complete it, now go back to Morgen, you'll notice the sticky criticism, the subtask of the edit video is gone because now it's complete, and Morgen doesn't want to show you complete tasks. As I don't personally use Clickup and haven't used Clickup in a long time, I'm just going to create a Facebook post example inside of the social media list so you can see it, but there are going to be plenty of other features in Clickup that I just don't understand. Feel free to question, explore, and ask inside of the Discord for those that do use Clickup more, because I know there's a couple of people in the Morgen Discord that use Clickup a lot. But now when I go back to Morgen, you can see the Facebook post is inside the social media list because we are organizing by list and grouping by status. You'll notice the filtering options show me all of those statuses. So if you've got other statuses in Clickup, you'll be able to see those, hide those, move those, just like all of the other options inside of Morgen's view. The display labels have tons of information because Clickup has tons of information. But again, something I want to emphasize, the due date is what is synced from Clickup to Morgen. If I go to this Facebook post and then go to add a date, let's say tomorrow, and now come back to Morgen, actually let's just turn that off so we can see everything. You can see it's due tomorrow. Facebook post is due tomorrow. I'm showing that label. It's also showing on Wednesday it's due tomorrow. And if I drag that down to, I don't know, let's say sometime today, you'll see the due date has been updated in Clickup. Now it's due at 4 p.m. today instead, which is why it's changed the lists. And in Clickup, the due date is now saying today at 4 p.m. But if I drag that to tomorrow at whatever time that was, and then drag and schedule a time inside of Morgen, this planned time, so when I click into the task, you can see planned start, planned end. This time on the 3rd of December at 4:45 is planned dates inside of Morgen, not dates inside of Clickup. So you can see the due date is now tomorrow at 4:40, not today at 4:45. If I add an urgent priority in there and come back to Morgen, you can see we now have a flag. We've got urgent priority because the priority is being shown as a display label. It's flagged high priority. It's being shown on the Facebook post as urgent priority, and I can change the name of this to script FB post. Let's save it. If I left click copy and then paste it in there, edit Facebook post and save. Inside of Morgen, I have multiple sessions. I have multiple planned dates, start and end, but the due date, which is synced to ClickUp, is still tomorrow at 4:40. If I was to come up and then manage due dates on the calendar and turn that off, you can see the Facebook has disappeared. If I turn it on, the Facebook has reappeared. What this does mean is that if I go back into ClickUp and for demonstration purposes, imagine I am now my editor and my editor decides, yes, I've actually completed this. If they change it from to do to complete, if they do it, because Morgen is connected to the same ClickUp account, you can see it's gone from the sidebar. Those 2 sessions have been complete and the due date has gone because the project, the task inside of ClickUp has been complete. So it allows you to sync projects, tasks, however you want to describe them, in Morgen to whatever the source is, which in this case is ClickUp. If we then go to our integrations, add account, and it's very similar to connecting Todoist. Select which task to import. I'm just going to import them all. So save, authentication succeeded, and then open. And so we have Todoist available and connected. You'll notice the integration works pretty much the same. If I go into the view settings, I then have different grouping options. So priority, project, label, and section, because Todoist you have sections. And then if we group by, let's say priority, you can then organize by whatever the other things are. Ordering by due date, project, section, direction, ascending, descending, hiding or showing or filtering or reordering, all are the same. Display labels again are the same. Again, giving you the option to manage due dates on the calendar. So if I turn this on, and then go to the example, open this in Todoist, you'll notice here there is no due date. So let's add a due date for tomorrow, add a test label priority. Let's change that to 2. So it's been changed to something else. Add a subtask, and then let's add a subtask to show you the indenting and how that looks. If I go back to Morgen, there we've got the example. It's got the new priority, it's got the tag, it's got the inbox, it's got the test label, it's then got the due tomorrow, it's then got the other subtask, and then the subtask as well showing, with most of them showing in the no priority, but in priority 2 we have the example because that's what it has, a priority 2. I can then drag this onto the calendar. We've got the subtask on the calendar, and then we've got the subtask scheduled on the calendar as well. If I tick all of these done, you'll see inside of Todoist, both are done. The subtask has been ticked off, the subtask has been ticked off. And so if I click off the task inside of Todoist, the task will then disappear from Morgen because Morgen can see that it's been complete and you don't need to bring it in. I did just realize that I forgot to show you the due dates. I'm going to add the due date on again. Let's just say that's due tomorrow. And you will see we have the test due date visualizing on the Wednesday, which is obviously tomorrow. It's also appearing in the due tomorrow, so I'm going to tick that off done because I've actually done it, and you can see the test is going to disappear because the task has been completed. Next up we have connecting Microsoft To Do. Exactly the same principle, just push the right account, connect, open. Now Microsoft To Do has been connected, and now get a To Do icon, and here you can see there are a couple overdue, there are a couple in tasks, a couple in inbox, then also some assigned to me in Planner. So for those of you that use the Planner, which could be inside Microsoft Teams, you can see we've got Planner, and someone assigns you a task similar to the Google task where someone assigns you in a Google Doc, but this is inside of the Microsoft Planner. Morgen will also bring that task in, group by, select the options that are available, organize options that are available. Everything else is exactly the same, but as you can see, display labels, there are lots more display labels because there's lots more information from Microsoft To Do. Now, something I do want to mention is that I've actually just connected another To Do account, and you can see this is my personal To Do account, which has got other tasks in, and at the top you can see these are 2 different task sources. I have 2 different Microsoft To Do accounts connected inside of Morgen. This can also be done with other integrations where you can add more than just one account, which could result in seeing 2 ticks like this because I've got 2 different accounts connected. If I go in, you can see there's no grouping at the moment, so let's just go task list. Now I've got task list grouping, so it's in tasks, list 2, list 3, and then flagged emails. So the flagged emails that appear in your Outlook account that would go to Microsoft To Do, which you could connect to Morgen anyway, could actually appear in your Microsoft To Do integration. That is a personal preference, which Morgen gives you flexibility with. Now with the linear integration, I don't personally use Morgen, but you can see you can select the teams you're in, and then similar with the ClickUp import settings, you can select all open issues or just assign to me. assigned to me or unassigned, only issues assigned to me that are started or not yet started, only issues assigned to me or unassigned, and that are started or not yet started. I'm going to leave it with all open issues, so save, authentication succeeded, open. And because this is Morgan's actual thing, I'm not going to show any of these, but you can see we've got all of the tasks and then we've got the overdue. I can then group by priority, state, cycle, which is different from some of the other tools that you can import information in because that's specific to, again, linear, project, label, assignee. If I quickly group by state, you can see I can filter for backlog, triage, to do, in progress, no state, turn them on, turn them off, move them around. And then again, display label shows you all the information that linear gives you or offers you. So there's plenty of things here for you to use. And if I group by assignee, you can see I've made an example just to show in the video. So if I drag this in, this is very similar to Clickup in that now if I double left click, I can open in linear, but it's locked because some of the information, i.e. priority, identifier, state, assignee, I need to go back to a linear to adjust that information. And when I click that it's done, you'll see in the sidebar and I hover over, all sessions are in the past or completed. But when I go into linear, you can see it's actually still in backlog because I haven't moved it through any of the stages. So now I'm going to say it's done. Now that it's completed, and I go back into Morgan, there is no longer me because I don't have anything assigned to me. And while I'm talking about linear, I'm going to use this as a very quick example. If I go to Slack and then say linear, I'm going to, let's create a new issue. I'm going to go to the community support team. I'm going to say testing Slack issue, leave description open. Let's move the status to in progress, select myself as the assignee, submit. And now when I go into Morgan, you can see in progress, testing Slack issue. And this is the issue that I've just created inside of Slack, going to linear. I could, if I wanted to do / linear, create optional title. Again, I'm going to put it into progress, submit. And that's actually showing the issue that's been created inside of Slack. Which again, when I go to Morgan, you can see there it is. There's the issue. If I go to linear, I can now see the test issue inside of linear, which I can close. So let's go to progress and say I've done it, which will of course move it out of progress because now it's no longer in progress. Something about linear, which is different from Microsoft To Do, you can see I've connected two different accounts. So I've got two icons as I explained earlier, but in linear, I now have growth and then dev. So these are two different teams. I have the growth team and the dev team. So we've got 150 tasks in the dev, and then in growth, we've got 49 with 6 overdue. But these are all in just the one icon because it's one linear account in two different teams. And that works very similar to the Notion integration. So let's sign in with Notion. Morgan is requesting access to Danny, and that is the workspace that I'm in. So I'm going to select pages. Now you'll notice something here which you may not see to start with is I've manually added these 3 databases, but this section lets you allow Morgan to access any of these pages. So any of my private pages can now be accessed by Morgan, or any of the shared pages now accessed by Morgan. So allow access, and it brings me to the Morgan Notion integration settings. Let's save it. I now have a Notion icon, but I don't have anything showing, and that's because Notion as an account is connected, but I don't have a database connected. So I'm going to go View, Edit Notion Import Preferences, and now I'm actually going to add a Notion database, and that's from any of those pages that I previously selected. And for reference, that is why I added Morgan in brackets so I knew which ones to connect. And just for reference, I realized that I didn't show this in the original recording. If you go down to the Connect To option and then type in Morgan, you can then connect a database page to Morgan, confirm, and now this example database has been connected to Morgan. So when I come out to the dashboard, this database will now appear as an option. So when I scroll down all the way to the bottom, add Notion database, you can see there's the example database. Something worth noting, you can see can edit, can read content, insert content, update, comment and read comments, etc. So depending on your Notion permissions will depend on if you can connect a database to Morgan. So I've got the task database, and if I scroll down, I can add another Notion database, which is going to be the projects Notion database. I want all of the tasks from the tasks database to go into Morgan, not just the ones assigned to myself. And I want to make sure I change this box so I actually have a tick option when I'm inside of Morgan. I'm going to use the checkbox property, which I'll cover in a bit. And then I also want to map some other properties from the Notion database. So the description, if I hover over the I, needs to be a text property. So I'm going to use the description text property. The due date, if I hover over the I, needs to be a date property. So I'm going to use the due date property. And then the estimated duration, hover over I, needs to be a number property. And this one I've named estimate. You'll notice down the bottom, the Morgan app will import 200 of the most recent tasks, maximum from each database. So you'd only have 200 open tasks at any one time from Notion in Morgen, which I think is certainly enough. And for the projects database, for those that are familiar with Notion, is basically the same as the task database, the only difference being the name of the database. So I'm going to use a status this time, and the status is going to be done. So when the status is done, that is when Morgen considers the task, or in this case the project, as done. The description, I'm going to use the description. The due date, I'm going to use the due date again. You'll notice timeline is another date property in the database, which I'll show you in a bit. And then we have the estimated duration, which I'm going to put estimate, and now save. So if we head back to Morgen, now we've got the tasks Morgen database. There is nothing in here. And then we have a drop down going to the projects database, which again, we have nothing in here, but these settings, these view settings, are actually saved from previous explanations to other people. So if we come in, grouping, we've got priority, select, energy, which is a bit of an odd one, status, and person. Energy is a bit odd because it's not like any of the other integrations. And again, this is why I want to emphasize this view button is unique to each integration. All of these options here is unique to the application, the source, whether it's Clickup or Google Tasks or Linear. And Notion, because its flexibility in the naming of properties is different from the other external integrations. So now if I come into Notion, you can see here is the task database. This is the inline version. That's the actual database page. And then I have the projects database, again, an inline view. And there is the energy field, the energy property. It is just a normal select property. When I click into the energy, I've made stars, so it's a 1 star, this is a 3 star, and this is a 2 star. And let's tick these all so they still need to be completed. Now when I come back to Morgen, you can see we've got all those tasks that need to be completed, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and we've got the star, because inside of the view option, we have the display label energy, and so I'm showing energy. If I group then by energy, I now am grouping by the select property you've made inside of Notion. This is where the power of Notion can be used with the power of Morgen. To make this a little bit easier to show, I've got Morgen up on the side and I've got Notion up as my window in the browser. So I'm going to go due date is tomorrow. I'm going to add description into the description field. Estimate is going to be 30. Energy, let's just say 1, and then I'm going to assign myself to it. So you see it's updating, and you can see it's refreshing. Now I need to get printer ink tomorrow because the due date you see here is for tomorrow. It is in the 1-star energy list, and if I drag this onto the calendar, you can see it's giving me a very big block time. If we go back to the Morgen Notion integration setup, you can see there is an explanation here as to how the estimate works. 0.5 is 30 minutes, 1 is 1 hour. So when I typed in 30, it wasn't 30 minutes, it was 30 hours. And obviously 30 hours is longer than a day, so Morgen makes it shorter. So in order to make this 30 minutes, I need to go 0.5. And if I come into the view settings and actually show the estimate, you can see it's just changed from 30H to 30M. So now when I drag it on, you can see it's actually a 30-minute slot. I drop that in there, let's just zoom in with the bracket. You can see I now have a 30-minute slot. It's got a Notion icon, which will take me back to Notion. And if I tick the task done, it's been completed inside of Morgen and has now been completed inside of Notion. If I tick this again inside of Notion, Morgen will recognize, hey, you still need to do that task. I'm going to manually refresh because it's quicker. And you can see after a refresh, get printer ink is there. If I click, there's the description. There's the title, there's the energy estimate, status, which is another property inside of the database, which I'm showing. But like the other external integrations, some of these properties need to be changed inside of Notion. Something I find useful about Morgen, which as I've shown before, if I have the due date, say it's on Saturday, the due date here is shown inside of Morgen visually. So I've just turned off the Morgen and Obsidian due dates because there was a lot of them, so you can see it easier. There's the get printer ink due date, but if I schedule this in for various times, I can actually see when I've planned to do the thing. Let's say I'm going to do it then as well, and then do it then as well in the evening. I now have date information, multiple date information, which obviously isn't synced back to Notion because, like I say, due dates are synced, not planned dates, but I can see the dates on the same calendar. Inside of Notion, if I create a calendar view, I have to pick one or the other. So link database, you can see the get printer is shown on the 7th. I could then go into the calendar layout settings and then say show calendar by, and then just go by plan date. So I've added a plan date property. Let's just add a plan date in and say on Wednesday, but now in the calendar, I can either go by Wednesday, plan date, by the due date, which is on Saturday, but that's individual, and I can't add multiple dates inside of one of these properties, unlike Morgen, which lets me have multiple sessions, i.e. one on Tuesday, one on Wednesday, one on Thursday, and then I can see the due date on Saturday. In this specific case, if I just click Get the Printer Ink Done, all of those sessions, like the other integrations, will be completed, as you can see, and the due date is gone. Now, Notion users will probably have already noticed that I have a done status down in this project database, which is different from the tick box. This status has lots of different statuses, so I'm going to go to Not Started, and it's related to the task database. This 1, 2, 3, and 4 is related to the example project video. So now if I go to Morgen, I'm still looking at the task database, 1, 2, 3, 4, but I'm going to go to the view and actually change the group by to projects. So you can see example video is a project. It's a relation property that I'm organizing the tasks by. I'm going to turn off that energy just so you can see. So we got 1, 2, 3, and 4. And let's actually change that order to due date. And then let's just say they're all due one after the other. Let's just close down those lists so make it easier to see. So we got 1, 2, 3, and 4. And let's show the due date. So tomorrow, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. From a task management point of view, now I can see these tasks are related to this project. Again, this could be a label that you show. So maybe you want to group by priority and then show the project label so you can see example video is the project. This view option has almost endless possibilities with the way that you can group and do things. But because I also have the project database in here, if I go to the projects database, there's the example video. 1, 2, 3, and 4 are all the tasks because if I go to view, I can show the display labels of those tasks. If I go to the timeline and show the timeline, so now I have a project view and saying, hey, these are the 4 tasks that are related to the project. If I turn on all of the information, you can see it's 6 hours. If I add a due date into the project to say it's on the 8th, the timeline is from the 2nd all the way through to the 8th. So that's the working timeline. Now I'm showing all that information inside of Morgen. There's all of the timeline and all the other display labels. On that point though with the timeline, for those of you that missed the Obsidian section, you can see here, I have the task actually scheduled, obviously in Obsidian, across the day. So my timeline, I wouldn't show inside of the sidebar. I would actually put the task inside of the all day section, then drag it along wherever it's like due. So the example video is now on the all day section, and you'll see the due date isn't being shown because if I go to the tasks, then go to the view, manage due dates is on, but if I go to projects and then go to view, manage due dates is off. So you can have projects due dates shown, task due dates shown, or both of them shown. So if I turn that on, now I've got the example video due date being shown. I've got the timeline inside of the all day section, which if I double click, I can change this to a different calendar, maybe my tech YouTube calendar, confirm. So when I go and do my planning in calendar set 3, the example video will stay there because that's the project. But when I go back to 1 and then drag in some slots, this is going to be huge because the estimate's big. But this remains on the task calendar so that if I push 3, it's only showing the main project in the overview with the deadline showing, and the smaller project tasks being scheduled in the day. So again, I've got plan dates, multiple plan dates because they're in the all day, a timeline plan date, a specific timed plan date, a due date, all showing in one screen, which can easily be toggled between calendar sets due to the calendars that they're in, whether it be the tech video project calendar or the task get things done calendar, all of which are synced up to those settings that I had before. So if I tick off the example video and I tick off the example video up there, you can see all sessions in the past or completed. And just to remind you, the settings at the moment, it looks for the status is done. So at the moment, the status is not started. If I tick this video example done, you'll see now inside of Notion, the video example has been moved, the status has been moved to done. It's at this point, I'm going to leave the Notion database creators to fiddle around with automations and workflows and templates and things to work out a workflow that works for you. But with a lot of help from Camille from Twitter, she managed to help me out with an automation that I think is pretty useful, especially when combined with Morgen. So you can see here, we've got task 1 is blocking task 2. Task 2 is blocking task 3 and is blocked by task 1. Task 3, blocking 4, blocked by task 2. And the block status is being shown through a select property. Inside of Morgen, if we have a look at the view settings, I have group by the block status, that's the property, the select property. I'm then hiding all the display labels except from blocked by, and then I'm showing both unblocked and blocked. I could hide the blocked because I can't actually schedule those, but I can see 2, 3, and 4 are blocked. 2 is blocked by 1, 3 blocked by 2, 4 blocked by 3. So I know if I'm going to schedule a task, I can schedule number 1 for later, because it's an unblocked task. And this is great, but when I complete task 1, I want it to unblock task 2, and that is where the Notion automation comes in, which Camille helped me with. So when we come into Notion, if I click on the lightning bolt, you can see there is an unblocked tasks automation, just the one. As a quick overview, what it's doing is it's checking to see if the checkbox is ticked. If it is, then do something. And this is where I initially got confused and couldn't work out how to do it. So essentially what this is doing is, if the checkbox is ticked, look at the trigger page blocking property, and then edit the blocking property, so blocked by is removed. So when the task is complete, the blocked by will get removed, and the block status will go to unblocked. So just to show you, if I tick 1, the checkbox has been ticked. Now the blocking is going to get removed, and because blocking has been removed, it's now been removed by the blocked by in the task 2, but more importantly, it's now showing as unblocked. So if I tick 2, blocking and blocked by will go, and it will change the block status to unblocked. If we look at that from a Morgen side, so if Morgen is ticked done, the unblocked task 1 is ticked done, you can see inside of Notion, the automation will take place. And once it's all updated, there we go, the blocking's gone, unblocked, etc. Now 2 is in the unblocked section. If I schedule number 2 and say, yep, I've now done number 2, it's now going to complete it inside of Morgen, which completes it inside of Notion, which triggers the automation to remove the blocking, the blocked by, changes the status, and now inside of Morgen, the status of 3 gets moved to unblocked. Maybe that's a little bit too much for some people, but that's the sort of power and creativity that you can have using Notion and Morgen with all of these options with the viewing and the rest of it. It's just fun. Another daily reminder to please check the changelog for Morgen. They update things so quickly, and I'm currently testing a couple of things that I think will be out just after this video's release, but I can't put it in the video in case it's not. So just check the changelog and updates to what's happened to Morgen. But while I was editing the video yesterday, I came up with a different idea. So inside of the Notion projects integration, if we go to only tasks assigned to me, use the assigned to property. So if I go to Notion, I'm using this assigned property there, and obviously me. If we then change the status is done when complete to something else, so if we go to the status, you can see we've got to do, in progress, and then it's only looking for the complete. We've got publish and done. So if I assume I am the editor, and once I am done editing the thing, it's ready to publish, I could have it so that inside of my Morgen, when I click done, it goes to publish. Then when I save and head back to Morgen, you can see at the moment it's in script. Obviously ignore these. If I am the editor and I'm only showing the things that are assigned to me, these are videos that needed to be edited. Now when I tick it done, the status inside of Notion is now changed to publish. So if you've got different people at different stages, you could have an editor move it to publish. But now imagine I am someone else, and this is only tasks assigned to me. If the assignee is now changed, so inside of Notion, it's publish, but now it's assigned to someone else, say the copywriter, that could be done through an automation or through a manual selection. And now if it goes into their Morgen, because it's assigned to them, instead of it being status is publish, it could be status is done. So they actually publish the video. So it shows up in their Morgen once the editor has actually completed it. This is one of those workflows that I think you could really play around with using Notion automations and properties, and obviously you can do it with other project management tools as well. But as you can see, that was a little task that I added in because I thought, oh, that's really good, let's do that. So I'm going to tick that one done. And I don't actually have the video up in Obsidian. Let's open it up. Now to wrap up all of the integrations for the moment, if we go to add account, all the way down the bottom you can see Zapier. If you click on Zapier, it says you can connect to Zapier, copy the API key, so I can copy my key, and then create some zaps. For those of you that use Zapier, you'll be able to do far more than I can because I don't use this thing, but you can see I've tested Gmail to Morgen. Oh, I've just realized I've misspelled that. Gmail to Morgen. And you can see it checks every 15 minutes for a new start email, and then it finds a task and creates a task. And I've essentially done the same thing for Asana. So even though there isn't a native integration between Asana and Morgen, you can create a Morgen task from a new task in Asana. But it requires you to use Zapier, and I'm not going to explain how to use this but it requires you to use Zapier, and obviously if you've got a lot of Asana tasks, you will breeze through the free plan very quickly in a month, requiring you to pay, which doesn't really make sense to pay for two tools. But I did want to include this because you can, inside of Morgen and Zapier, create a task and find a task. So there are a couple of things that you can do inside of Zapier. Again, I don't use it that much, so I don't know exactly what you can do, but Zapier users, feel free to comment in the comment section below. Next, I want to head back to the calendar accounts quickly. So if we push the plus button, you can see we've got Fastmail, iCloud, other CalDAV providers, subscription calendars, so things like school turn dates or football events, or maybe you change your calendar to a subscription calendar so you can still bring it into Morgen because of work permissions. Once you've clicked, you can see you can add in the URL and you can use a subscription calendar. You may also notice it is a .ics, so any .ics files you can also bring into Morgen and use them as just subscription calendars, and obviously push the connect button to connect it. But now getting to these three different options, this is where Microsoft is different from Google. If we hover over the eye, you can see use this option to connect a corporate exchange account that does not support modern authentication. Essentially, if you click on this, you have to enter your email, your password, username, and server URL, so this is specific to the app. It's not modern authentication, i.e. directs you back to Outlook. The Outlook integration, if I hover over the eye, connect personal accounts such as Outlook.com, Hotmail, or Live. And if I click on Outlook, you can see it's going to redirect me to try and sign in with Microsoft for authentication. If I use Office 365, hover over the eye, it says use school or Office 365 accounts. And again, if I click on it, it's going to redirect me to Microsoft for authentication. The reason these are different is because sharing permissions are actually different depending on the type of Outlook account that you have. If I go to Office 365, sign in with Microsoft, and when I try and sign in with a personal Outlook, you see authentication failed because Office 365 and Office personal accounts, i.e. at Live, at Outlook, don't work. I'm not going to explain why, they just don't work. So personal accounts won't work with Office 365. However, Office 365, if I go into the Outlook, sign in with Microsoft, and then sign in with my Morgen Work, you can see it's worked. So I've now connected a work Microsoft email to the personal Outlook connection. As I've already connected this email, Morgan's getting a bit confused, saying, hey, you've already got this. What are you talking about? So I'm going to push continue. I'm going to skip that. But now, as you can see, there's no email down the bottom for me to add because the sharing permissions are different. So to clarify, you can add any Microsoft email or calendar account to the Outlook integration, but the permissions will differ than if you connect a work or team to the Office 365, but you can't connect a personal to Office 365. You may have also noticed that Marco, one of the team members, is actually sharing his calendar with me. If I go into Morgen, you can see we've got the purple, which is what Marco's calendar is, and then orange because it's merging duplicate events from different calendars, very similar to the Google integration. And then the rest of his calendar is showing up as blocked. Or I guess it's more purpley pink. My colors aren't great. However, Marco actually shared his calendar with me. If I go to Office 365 and now reconnect, now if I come into my calendar, I have the add plus calendar by email. So if I add Marco at morgen.so and enter, I get an error because I don't have full read access. You can see here, you must have full read access to connect a delegate calendar. In the other one, I can see the free and busy events, but that's it. I can't see any details. On this one, I could see the details if I have full read access given by the person that owns the calendar. But if I add a calendar, which I have read access to, you can see it works perfectly fine. This calendar account is being shared with you. You have access to the listed calendars. Which brings us very nicely onto the AI Planner button you can see at the top right, but I'm going to walk the dog, so I'll be back in a bit. So for this AI planning section, I'm actually going to go into my calendar set 9. As you can see, I'm in my example calendar. If I go to the calendar set, turned basically them all off except from these example 1 through 5. If you have a look at the top left, I've still got all of the task integrations showing, but I've turned off the manage due dates on the calendar settings, so none of the due dates are showing, but I still have tasks from everything showing inside of Morgen. And when I push this AI Planner button, we've got some settings at the top which I'll go through in a bit, but I'm given a warning. AI Planner can only schedule tasks on your frames. Create a frame, extend to the planning range, and make sure your calendars with frames are visible. So I'm going to push create a frame, and this gives you an onboarding, but I'm just going to actually do it. At the moment it is about 7:30, so I'm going to create a slot here from 8 till 10, and this is where we've got the event information, task information, and what we want now is a frame. This, as you can see, is in the example 1 calendar. The title of this frame is smart frame, that's the default, and then I can add any filtered list, which again I'll go through later, but then we have the start, end time, and any repeating option. And by default, because I've added it on a Wednesday, it says every weekday. Weekday being Monday to Friday. So every Monday to Friday, this frame will repeat. It is free, private, and I can add an alert if I want. I don't really see the point of that for a frame, but for demonstration purposes, I'm going to remove the repeat option. And then you'll notice I've got a schedule button or save button. The schedule button will take me to the same place the AI Planner button did. So I'm going to schedule. And now you can see there are 3 tasks that have been suggested. They are bobbing, they're also glowing, and they are inside this smart frame. If I right click on this task, I have options. I can delete the task, mark the task as done, ignore the task. So if I ignore the task, you can see it's adjusted the task suggestions. Or I can right click and change estimate. So at the moment, it looks like it's going to take half an hour. So let's change that to 2 hours. Now this task is taking up the entire slot of the smart frame, pushing out the other tasks that were suggested. So if I change the estimate and go back to an hour, now it's suggesting an hour for this task, and then 1 hour 15, which actually goes beyond the smart frame. Smart frame finishes at 10, this is 10:15. And this is one of the first things that I got confused when I first saw this. So I'm going to go into Open Preferences. You'll notice I'm in the AI Planner section, and much of these settings are actually duplicated inside this scheduling overview. So the use default task duration, 30 minutes, is also in the overview. The schedule tasks that have no due date is also in the overview. The split long task is in the overview, but the setting of the split long task is different, which I'll go through later, but you can see here, increase time estimates by 20% when scheduling a task. And here you can see it adds 20% of an estimate onto a task length. I have this turned off, but Morgen is still suggesting that it takes a little longer, and that is because I've estimated this task to take 3 hours, and it's giving me a 15-minute buffer to say if I want to do it or not, a little bit longer than the actual suggested frame. But I don't actually like these suggestions, so I can just exit out of the AI plan. And if I like these suggestions, I can schedule all, which will put them into my plan. But if I push the exit button at the top right, you can see in the calendar, it didn't actually schedule anything. So now what I want to do is if I hover over the smart frame, you can see I can start the AI planner here as well, or I can edit the smart frame. I'm now actually going to change it to weekday and change the name to evening and save. And you can see now it's repeating every evening. So now when I go to the AI planner, it's showing me Wednesday and Thursday and giving me more suggestions. If we come up and have a look at the settings, plan ahead is how many days ahead we want to plan. We can go all the way through to 8. So you see it's going to schedule lots of different tasks all the way through in those slots. Or I can drag it all the way back to just to today, and now it's scheduling just today. I'm going to move it just over so I can see the 2 days, and then I can adjust the breaks or buffers. So if I increase this a little bit, it's not going to change anything at the moment, but if I go to Open Preferences, I'm still on hustle mode. So schedule 20-minute breaks after 2.5 hours of scheduled work. However, if I click on balance mode, you'll see the breaks and buffers increased. It go down and then up. And this is because scheduled 10 minutes of breaks after every hour of scheduled work. So now when I have a look at the suggestions, you can see there's an hour, 10-minute break, there's another slot. In this case, it's selecting one task and then doesn't want you to break whatever it is that you're working on for this task, so keeps it all together rather than splitting it, because the split long task, if we go into the preferences, is anything longer than 2 hours gets split into a session of at least 1 hour. Well, this session isn't longer than 2 hours, so it's not going to get split. However, if I increase the breaks, you can see now it's got rid of the other task because I want more breaks. There are bigger breaks in between this first day, and if I move that all the way to the top, you can see now I have loads of breaks. I am a bit of a hustler, so I don't have any breaks. And then the default duration does exactly what you would expect. I push 15 and it makes them 15-minute default duration times. Default duration times unless specified otherwise. So this is Morgen for beginners, 12 hours. So this is actually continuing on from other scheduled slots that I have previously in my calendar. And this is a task still to do today, which is estimated to take 3 hours. So obviously the default duration is not going to be 15 minutes, it's going to be 3 hours. If I go to 1 hour, now it's going to suggest everything takes about an hour. You can see this one is a smaller slot because this is being prioritized by Morgen over this task. And while we're here, you can see this task is from Clickup, this one is from Obsidian, this one is from Linear, and this one is from Morgen. So the AI planner is taking all of my task sources into consideration when suggesting when to do tasks. And if you can remember all the way back towards the start of the video, I showed you these custom filters. You can see we can have a look for all of the tasks from Morgen or Obsidian or Notion or Google Tasks or ClickUp or wherever. So if we have a look at all of the Obsidian and Morgen tasks and then go into the filtered view sort, you can see Morgen priority factor. If I hover over, you see there's the description of what the AI planner is using to prioritize tasks. It's using the importance, so the priority levels of different tasks, but not just the priority set, but also the due date, the estimated duration, and other factors like how long they've been overdue. If a task has been overdue for a few days, the priority is obviously decreased because it's been sat in your overdue for a few days. And what you'll notice here is the thing right at the top is actually being suggested first by the AI planner. But this task is above the Morgen for beginners. Now, why is this one not being scheduled, but this one is? So you can see Morgen for beginners is being suggested. This go through projects isn't being suggested at the moment. However, it's in the sidebar. So these tasks are due soon or overdue, but they can't be added to any frame. So it's not being suggested by the AI planner. And if I hover over the I, it gives me a reason why. The availability defined by your visible frames was not enough to schedule this task. And that is because you can see it's due today, but we've also got 2 other tasks due today, so it's got to pick one that isn't going to be selected. And it won't suggest this for tomorrow because then you would be suggesting to do a task after the due date, which doesn't really make any logical sense. If I change the default duration down to 30 minutes, you can see now we've got all 3 of those being scheduled in, and it's obviously due today. So it's being put on today. However, I could quite easily just come in and say, you know what, I actually want to do this then. Now I have actually scheduled that task on the calendar, these suggestions are going to be adjusted. And now you can see we've got 3 tasks suggested, these 2 due today. This example calendar setup for office hours is due on Thursday, so it needs to get done. But now there's no time for this task to be done, which means I need to consider moving one of the due dates or changing an estimate or manually dragging it into at some point. However, maybe I don't want Morgen Tasks in this evening slot, so I'm going to exit out of this AI planner and actually remove that schedule slot because I don't want it there. And in this evening slot, I'm going to add a filter. And when I click on filter, you can see it's just showing all of them. But I could filter for, if I go here, just this team or just this team in Linear, or maybe just the Outlook emails, to-do emails, the Todoist emails. If we go into Obsidian, I could pick task size, status, note. I'm actually going to pick all Obsidian tasks. And then I'm also going to select all ClickUp tasks. So you can see now it's only going to filter all the Obsidian tasks and all the ClickUp tasks. And let's schedule. And you can now see in that filter, the top task is from ClickUp and the bottom task is from Obsidian. But the filter is frame specific, which is why you can still see Linear, Google Task and Morgen Task in the sidebar because these are due soon or overdue, so need to be paid attention to. In this case, I'm actually going to schedule all. And you see if I left click, this is actually a ClickUp task. But now that I've seen it on my calendar, I don't actually want all of these. But now I'm going to use a feature I'm currently beta testing, so I'm going to hold control on my keyboard, left click, left click, left click, and push delete, and I'm going to bulk delete all of those tasks, so delete event 3, and I've now unscheduled all of those tasks. I'm going to go into the frame, edit, and I'm going to be a bit more specific, so I'm going to say I only actually want things from the sport hashtag inside of Obsidian. So you can see tag is sport. There are 33 potential options, and now when I push schedule, you can see it's essentially picked the one main task that I'm currently working on with that tag. But now that I've changed the filter to only Morgen Tasks, you can see there are tons of tasks in here, and I've actually changed another one of the settings, scheduled tasks with no due date. But now I'm looking for all Morgen tasks, and I've actually changed a setting up here that says scheduled tasks with no due date. And some of these, as you'll notice here, are from different task lists, and some of these are actually tasks that aren't being shown inside of my Morgen because I have them filtered out and are actually recurring tasks. So if I show my recurring task list, you can see here, book trampoline haul, and it doesn't have a due date because I need it to happen every few months, but I don't really want it to schedule right now. So what I can do is turn this off, and now it's not going to suggest any recurring tasks because recurring tasks don't obviously have a due date. So I'm going to hide that list again, and now it's giving me a load of other suggestions. However, if I go to the frame and edit the frame and just schedule the task from inbox, read later, trampoline, and Morgen, we've still got 20 tasks in here. So if I schedule, it's selecting any task inside of those Morgen lists. But if I turn this setting off, because these ones don't have due dates, now the suggestions have changed. If I add that back in, you can see the suggestion has changed again. If I come into clothing dye and change the importance to, let's say, high, now you can see the suggestion clothing dye is now earlier on. And something else you'll also notice is all of these are going into the same task calendar. If I exit out, go into my preferences, you can see default calendar for tasks is currently example 1. So if I click and create a task, it goes into example 1. However, if I change this to my tasks calendar, which is what I personally use, now go task, you can see it's blue, it's going into my personal task calendar. But I can make it specific to the frame calendar, so I can change this setting to yes, always. Now when I come into this framed section, go task, it's defaulting to the example 1 calendar. What this means is you could have an evening frame, which is for personal work. So let's say the example 1 was personal work, but now if I create a frame a little lower, so frame, work, and go example 5, save, and create a task inside of this frame, now we've got example 5 showing. And now when I go into the AI planner and have a look at the frames, loads of different tasks are being suggested. However, something worth noting, if I move this frame to a different time, let's say this and future occurrences, now on a different calendar I have an overlapping frame. If I go to my 1 calendar, so this is going to show my actual calendar, and I'm also showing the example 5, if I zoom in a bit, you can see I have a videos frame here. So this is the frame that I currently use, which is tag #sport, and it's in my task calendar. But then I have another frame, which if I go to edit, is that frame in the example 5 calendar. If I was to create a task in this slot, it's actually going to the task calendar, not the work calendar, because overlapping frames gets confusing. So bear that in mind. And if I was to go to the AI planner now and go a little bit further ahead, you can see it's still suggesting tasks to appear, and this one inside of that work calendar I just made. And that's because I'm showing both the frame calendars. If I remove the example 5 calendar from the view, you can see the frame is gone and now the suggestion is gone. Something worth noting is the AI planner ignores all of these all-day tasks, which means that even though this task is scheduled all day, which in theory would be like 7 times 24, it doesn't take that into consideration. So these 12 hours are still counted as 12 hours minus the slots that have actually been scheduled during the day. For those of you interested in my current ideal week set up by the frames, you can see I've got my Google Tasks, Microsoft To Do, Outlook, and then Obsidian Tech tagged tasks in the email task frame, so that's in the morning. Most of the time the email tasks are scheduled because the Obsidian task is a long one, so the email ones are scheduled first. Then inside of the video frame, again it's a 2-hour slot. This is for the sport videos. I then have a video inbox and trampoline, and this looks for the task list of my Morgen inbox, trampoline, and then the tech videos. And then in the evening, I look at anything in the read later or inbox that's been left over, which covers all of the frame tasks. And then on the weekends, you can see I've got a miscellaneous, which essentially covers all of the task lists inside of Morgen. For Notion, Todoist, Clickup, and linear tasks, I actually leave that to the AI planner to suggest. So when I come in, you can see I've got the Clickup and the linear tasks in there for me to manually drag in and schedule because I don't have a ideal time or slot to put any of these in, but that may change in the future. Now, to wrap this all up, the mobile app is a companion app. The desktop is first, mobile is second, but mobile still does everything that I need it to do. You can add tasks, schedule tasks, add priorities, see external tasks. So it does what I need it to do. Is it missing features? A couple, but I wouldn't say it's anything significant from my experience at least, but I'll let you explore on your own.